Good afternoon. Once again, we are here. Scouching Live is live. It's 2 p.m. on or May. Oh my God, it's May. Holy crap, it's May 2nd. Hope you're all doing well. For the first time in a while, I am finally rejoined after some technical difficulties by my producer AJ. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing better. Internet's faster than ever. It was already super fast, but now it's like double that, and it's cheaper because sometimes when you complain, you get things in life.
It's turbo time, right?
Oh
You
yeah.
got your gigabit. You're ready to party.
Oh yeah.
Ready to. I don't know what you do with gigabit internet. Download the internet in 8 seconds or something. I don't know.
Drag click all the NFTs and save them.
Yes, got it. Yeah, got it. Makes sense to me. Well, what we're going to do today is a bit of a playoff review so far. It's been a lot of fun watching the Stanley Cup playoffs this year. We're going to go series by series. I think we're going to start with the ones that have already ended and then go sort of forecasting with the ones that have that are going to be ending in the next few days. But before we do that, let's get through our little advertisements. We're brought to you by Fanatics. You can use our affiliate link code in the description or scan the QR code below my head to provide a small kickback to the show on anything you buy in the entire store. We're also brought to you by Puck Preps Hockey. For all your NCAA and CHL prospect needs, we are covering the U18s over there as they go on. I'll have a report from the US Finland game from the other day. And then I'll be doing some of the quarterfinals that are happening today. Been a fun tournament. Canada currently up 2-0 on Latvia in the last quarterfinal game of the year or of the day. We're also brought to you by Fractal Hockey, which is my business for hand track targeted player analysis and recruitment packages for the NCAA Europe and beyond. Again, we're partnered with the Golden Bucket Hockey Tournament taking place this month in Montreal over the May 24th, 25th, 26th weekend. Where if you are an NCAA or U Sports player or Division III NCAA player, you can showcase yourself to European general managers and scouts. A team from Finland just signed up today to show up, so there are teams from all over Europe that are coming in, and I'll be there, and it'll be a lot of fun. And you can also subscribe to Scouching.ca, of course, to get exclusive access to innovative data tools with tons of insight into draft prospects and players making their way into the NHL. And you'll get some exclusive content up there as well, which I'm still putting together. And so let's get into
access to
it.
Scouching reports. I think
That
we're going to
too,
get the
yes.
Ivan Demidov one up today or
Ivan
tomorrow.
Demidov is on the way. Yep.
That's a fun
Ivan
one.
Demidov. Yeah, unless TikTok blocks us for election manipulation again.
Hey,
maybe.
Hey, you know what? The Artemonov one, the appeal went through, but still waiting on the other. Which was it? The Salayev one. So
yeah. So what does the internet have against Russia? Really? What have they ever done? Anyway, let's get right into it. So we're going to start with the most, on paper, the most lopsided series of them all, which is New York, Washington. So the Rangers sweep the Washington Capitals. The what was it? -39 goal differential going into
37
playoffs. 37.
-37.
Sweeping them in 4 games. AJ, I don't know how much of this series you managed to catch. I saw
decent amount.
Yeah, I saw a decent amount of it myself. On the surface, you could obviously look at it and go, well, Washington didn't deserve a shot in the series. They didn't, this or that. Alex Ovechkin, 0 points. I think their leading scorer was Martin Fehervary.
Oh God.
Yeah. So yes, on paper, it was a bit lopsided, and probably the right team won. But I thought it was very interesting looking a little deeper into the numbers on this series, and that Washington actually had the better 5-on-5 numbers than the Rangers did.
That's
but their
not surprising, honestly.
Their power play was, not great at 11 something percent. They weren't getting output from the guys that they needed to get scoring from. Shesterkin was also very good when he needed to be. I thought he played really well in this series. He held Washington to 2 or fewer goals in 3 of those games. And the Rangers, look, the Rangers just, the thing that I noticed, and this might sound simplistic, but they just had guys who could score, and Washington just really seemed to struggle with the guys they had to keep up in terms of just having the skill to score goals. Like the Rangers, just with Mika Zibanejad had a great tournament. Chris Kreider, I thought, played really, really well, just with the speed and his ability to sort of just take advantage of the inexperienced, I guess you could say, inexperienced Washington defense group in the playoff series. It just, 5-on-5, they matched up actually pretty decently well. But at the end of the day, you got to score goals. And to me, New York had a bunch of guys on that team who can score goals at the NHL level, and Washington does not. I mean, I think they had the worst offense in the Eastern Conference or something like that. It was in terms of goal scoring in the regular season, I think they scored fewer goals than Columbus. So this kind of might have been an expectation. So yeah, I mean, I think the right team obviously won here, but I thought there was a chance this could, be closer than it was. And on paper at 5-on-5 it was, but Charlie Lindgren seriously regressed. I think he was an .865 goaltender in the 4 games, and
he let his brother get in his head. That's what happened.
Yeah, exactly. And just for the record, the Washington Capitals did indeed have the lowest amount of goals for in the Eastern Conference by a measure of 16 goals. So they were 16 goals behind Montreal, who had the lowest amount of goals for in the Eastern Conference. So there's your tidbit of the day. I don't know, AJ, you have any thoughts on this series? What are you feeling? How are you feeling about the Rangers moving forward? What's going on in your brain?
I'm still pretty convinced that they're not real Cup contenders in my mind. And really the points that I've laid out stand true. They're not good enough at 5-on-5, and they don't have a number 1 center. And I think having a number 1 center is still the key component to winning a Stanley Cup. Because if you go back and you look at because I went back and looked at all the Stanley Cup finals I've watched in my lifetime. So that's going back all the way to Anaheim, Ottawa. That was the first one I watched. Every team has a number 1 center. That one. Every single team.
Right.
So, and I'm not convinced that Mika's that guy. Vinny Trocheck, a really good player, but I think they have two Cs.
Yeah.
And I think it's really important to get that right, and they don't have it, but their 5-on-5 play, they're slower in terms of their pace, and they're just not, they're not the team I think is going to win. It doesn't mean that they're not a talented and very good team. I just think that their play style isn't conducive to winning a cup. So
right. I mean, I think I give them a little bit more credit having seen
fair.
them this season. I mean, I like in the playoffs especially. I know they were playing Washington,
Yep.
not a team I think that matches up super well against them, but the Rangers do play, I think, a really tight physical game that can sort of slow down other teams. And they do have some guys that can really move up the ice and get moving, and that's okay. But yeah, I think you're right. I think they just have a really rock solid team. I thought Keandre Miller, he only had a goal in the series, but whenever I was watching him, he's playing 20 minutes a night, just a really solid player, making the stops that he needed to make. Ryan Lindgren as well, and moving the puck pretty well. And Braden Schneider also, I thought, played pretty well for a guy who didn't score anything. So I think they just have, I don't think I agree. I think that a Stanley Cup is a bit of a long shot, but Shesterkin was great.
Yeah, they got the goalie, right? And
they got the goal. They got the goalie. Yeah, they've got their goalie, and he showed up every game, in my opinion. I mean, he wasn't threatened a ton, and I think that's going to change a lot against Carolina, and we'll see how that goes. We'll get to Carolina in a sec. But I don't know. I think that they are a team that it will interestingly line up with Carolina, because Carolina, I think, does have a deep and good team. But I think the Rangers also have a relatively deep team in a different kind of way, that they're kind of difficult to get on top of, multiple, over long periods of time with just how they roll their lines.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I also think that the Rangers, they won the series like they should. But I would say at 5-on-5, they weren't the dominant team. They were just the team that I think had the better finishing skill.
Yep.
And the better goaltender.
They're good at capitalizing.
That's all they needed.
They're really good at capitalizing on their chances. And
ironic against the Capitals.
My theory is that having such terrible ice on MSG and all those weird bounces, that they're just so good at making puck luck because they're used to having to deal with it. But that's a completely unfounded thing that I'm coming up with. It's just my own personal non-backed theory that I think is kind of funny. But I don't know. I think they're a team to me that I could totally see go to a Stanley Cup final, but it's I don't think they could win the final, if you get what I mean. Because a lot of the times the team with the best goalie finishes second. That's what I find, unless they finish first and they're the Tampa Bay Lightning, right? But they also had a really solid group of players in front of them.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
No, it's okay.
I was just gonna say, like, the thing also, and I think the thing that everyone's talking about, and we'll get to Toronto in a minute, but everyone in Toronto, and therefore everyone in the hockey world, is talking about the importance of everyone's talking about the importance of special teams. And in this one, like, I think Game 5, like in the third period, both goals that the Rangers scored to eliminate the Capitals were on the power play. And I think another one in that game is also on the power play. So, like, they have the guys that can just set up in the offensive zone and score. And in the playoffs, like, a lot of these series, I'd say most of them, I think I looked, most of them are relatively even at even strength scoring. There were a couple that aren't, but it seems to be like special teams and goaltending. Like, that's really where this season is separating teams.
Mm-hmm.
And so generally, like, in a sense, and also just in general, as a general thought, I think the referees in general in these series have actually been really good. I think games have been called pretty well balanced overall. I can't say that there's been like huge amounts of controvery for things that have happened.
There's been one game that comes to mind.
But one out of like 20, right? Like,
yeah.
To me, fair. It's like, so to me, I look at it and go, yeah, like, you're going to get chances on the power play. And at 5-on-5, things are a coin flip between a lot of these teams. So the teams with better finishing skill may actually have the advantage, because if you get them on the power play, then they can put the puck in the net. Whereas before, it's always been, well, who can break the rules the most? Who can pound you into submission the most, right? Like, even the Florida Tampa series, there was a lot of that. But the skill level of Florida and the offense that they could bring with that sort of physical style of play kind of separated
the smothering play, and we'll get into that later as well. But I think we wanted to talk about where Washington now goes from here.
Yeah, I mean, it's great that they made the playoffs. That's my first thought, right? Like, the fact that they made the playoffs with the expectations being so small and the odds being so against them.
Yeah, you didn't pick them to make the playoffs at the beginning of the year, did you? Because I didn't.
No, I didn't. I don't think so. I thought that was going to be like a Detroit thing, Ottawa, something like that.
I thought it'd be Pittsburgh.
Yeah, or Pittsburgh, sure. But definitely not Washington. So, Washington, I think they've drafted pretty well over the last few years, all things considered. The young guys, I thought, played pretty well. Like Connor McMichael, I thought, played pretty well. Yep. Hendrix Lapierre scored a goal. They've got some decent pieces down there. Ivan Miroshnichenko. So to me, I mean, I think that I think they would be a little bit remiss or a little bit misled if they think that this is like, oh, we're done now, we can start pushing to get competitive again. But also at the same time, they do have some core members of that team that are on the older side of things, like Ovechkin and Tom Wilson and TJ Oshie and a few of those guys. Who do you want those guys on a team where you're quote unquote rebuilding or whatever? I'm not sure. Like, I don't know. So are they going to be a team that does try to run it back because, they got there now, so let's try again? I don't know. But I think they have quite a few draft picks this year, if I'm not mistaken, and they have an interesting future. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think Washington's in a good spot, but I wouldn't look at this season and go, okay, we have our future fully in place. So I still think it needs work, but there's good pieces, and I don't think they're going to be necessarily bad for a long time. Like, they might miss the playoffs the next 2 years or so, maybe 3, but I don't think they're going to be a team that really struggles to, like, because I think the wheels are going to fall off in Pittsburgh in a really bad way.
Yes.
The way that the wheels fell off for the San Jose Sharks. I don't think it's going to happen like that with Washington, because they've stocked the cupboards in a way that is going to allow them to not go through such a terrible spell.
Yeah. I think they're also going to be, like, the thing about Washington, that when you look at their sort of salary breakdown, like, they have a lot of guys who, in the grand scheme of things, maybe aren't making a tremendous amount of money, but when you take it all in aggregate, you can kind of go, like, I don't know, like, it kind of gives them a lot less room to play around with. Like, obviously there's Ovechkin at 9.5, but beyond that, you've got Oshie and Wilson. Wilson's starting a new extension next year at 6.5. You got Dylan Strome until 2028 at $5 million.
Yep.
And then you have your defensemen of John Carlson, Nick Jensen, and Trevor Van Riemsdyk are all, well, I'm counting up here on the back of my head, $15 million in cap for the next 2 seasons. And you've got Martin Fehervary, who was their leading scorer in the playoffs, signed at 2.675 until 20. Like, they have their 5 defensemen locked up until 2026.
Rasmus
Carlson,
Sandin's also locked
yeah,
up too.
Sandin, Fehervary, Van Riemsdyk, Jensen, Carlson. I don't think that's a good enough group of defensemen to give them a tremendous amount of success in the future, and they're locked up. So, like, that's kind of where I might bring up some questions for Washington. Like, how do you improve around that group and manage that when you're locked into these guys who are making, not a ton of money, but it adds up. That's like $20 million.
Right, but they also have, I think, $15 million to play around. Yeah, they have $15 million to play around with this offseason to bring in some guys, and you may not want to go full out in terms of who you bring in, because you may look at yourself next season and think, okay, well, we can retain money on contracts and get players. Like, that might be how they do, or get draft assets. I think that might be the approach. It's like, we got a decent amount of cap space. Why don't we make trades for players that are not on great cap, that don't have necessarily the best cap hits? We'll retain salary, get some assets, and get ourselves moving in the right direction, because I think they've got the right coach in place. I'm a big fan of Spencer Carberry. I really am.
Sure.
He's the reason the Leafs power play was so good for years. It was terrible. It was awful when Manny Malhotra was running it.
And it is terrible.
Yeah, and it's
now
terrible.
that he's gone, it is terrible.
Yeah, it's terrible again, because they haven't made the right adjustments. And I think Carberry is a really good coach. I kind of wish that they had offered the Leafs gig to him at some point, but that didn't happen. But I like him as a future head coach, and I think that Washington's got a lot of the right pieces in place. They still got to figure out certain things. Like, they don't have a number 1 center in the pipeline by any means, and that's really hard to find. But if they can get that somehow, then that could be really huge for them, and getting as many picks as you can could help to further that process.
I think to close it out, though, I think the biggest thing that if I'm Washington, if I'm the general manager there, the focus has to be scoring. Like, Backstrom is gone. Ovechkin is old. Oshie is old. Like, they clearly struggled to score against the Rangers, and they have the cap space, like you said, and they need to find guys like they found with Sonny Milano, right?
Or
3
Dylan
years,
Strome, right?
Yeah, like those two guys at $7 million combined is perfectly reasonable, I think. And if they can add like a couple more of those guys, maybe find a way to, maybe Connor McMichael takes a jump, maybe Ivan Miroshnichenko takes a jump, but I think they still need just, if Max Pacioretty is out, Nicolas Aube-Kubel is out, bring in, you got to use your sort of brain a little and use your mathematics a little bit to find some really efficient ways to spend that money on offense, because that's probably going to help. I mean, they did score the fewest goals in the Eastern Conference and made the playoffs.
Hey,
so if they can sort of,
whose deal's up this year? Jakob Vrana.
There's an option,
Other
there's
than
an
Austin
option.
Matthews for a
back.
long time, he was the best even strength goal scorer in the league.
It's true.
And they're familiar with him, so you never know. But that's just something I saw, and I'm thinking, well, you never know, right?
Yeah, you never know. I mean,
we'll
see.
Really good player.
Yeah. Hey, they might bring in Steven Stamkos. Who knows?
Yeah,
why not?
who knows?
At this rate, Steven Stamkos playing with Alex Ovechkin. Who wouldn't say no? Who would say no?
Hilarious.
It would be hilarious. Anyway, we can move on, I think, to the Florida-Tampa series. I honestly didn't see enough of this one, I don't think. I saw the first few games for sure, and the last one where Florida just pounded Tampa into submission. I don't know. I don't really know how to feel about this one. I mean, Sergei Bobrovsky is being him again. He was unbelievable when he needed to be. Like the one game they gave up 6 goals, but in general, I thought he played really, really, really well. Like Tampa created some great chances against him, and he kept it out of the net when he needed to.
That save, like, because I remember seeing that save where he's like turned around and just puts his arm out. That save saved the game, because if that puck goes in the net, it's 3-2 Tampa, and that game doesn't go to overtime. So that was a game-saving save. As crazy as that, like, that's how important it was. I don't know if he's been like the best goalie. He's had his moments for sure. But I just think when you look at Florida, the way they play is so good. It's just the perfect style of hockey. It's this really nice blend of speed and aggressiveness, and they also have the physicality to like punish you. And they're
Yeah.
just built in a way that's modern and also kind of old school. Like it blends the
Oh yeah.
best of both worlds, and I think it's a really awesome style of hockey, and I just have so much fun watching them. And I think Tampa just got outmatched.
Yeah.
And it's not like
I
the
felt
talent level's that different, I don't think, in
no,
terms of
no.
the offensive players. I still think Florida might have the advantage in terms of just the depth of guys, and their defense is definitely better.
That's
And
what
I
I was
think
going to
that's
say.
the big
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
But I think it's just the play style. I think Florida's play style is just perfect.
Yeah, I think Florida, like whenever I watch the Florida Panthers, it doesn't seem to matter who's on the ice. Everybody just makes really good plays no matter what,
Yeah.
right? Like even guys this down the depth chart is like Eetu Luostarinen was making some good plays
Yeah.
that needed to be made, you
Like
know.
Lamborghini can make some plays
Yeah,
here and there. Ryan
yeah,
Lomberg.
Ryan Lomberg, yeah. I mean, he only played one game, but neither here nor there.
Exactly.
But
that's how
like
good they
Evan
are.
Rodriguez, played. I thought Anton Lundell played excellent in this
He
series
stepped
as well.
up huge when Sam Bennett
He
went
stepped
out,
up
too.
big time. Carter Verhaeghe had a great series. Some clutch goals from him as well. So, I mean, I think Florida, they were about what we expected, right? Like the
Yep.
overwhelming physical and fast and skilled team that they are. You know, Tampa, I thought Tampa, you can look at the series and go, oh, you know, Tampa done in 5. Oh, is this it for the team? You know, is Andre Vasilevsky cooked? Blah blah blah. And I'm like, well, I don't think so.
Yeah, I'm with you
Like
on
they
that.
need to make improvements. I think, especially on that back end. Like you are not going to win playoff games. I don't think when you're rolling out Emil Lilleberg, who was a waiver claim or whatever it was, Darren Radish.
It's funny, though. Those guys haven't even been that terrible. It's just
But
like...
but you see, like, again, it's like watching Toronto's defense try to break out the puck a lot of the time, where it's like they're slow and it's just not like it just doesn't, you know, when you look
They
at
kinda
how they lined up,
meander, and
yeah,
it's
they
not...
meander
It's
and
never
like they
clean.
invite pressure. It's not, yeah, like Matt Dumba was a free, like a trade deadline pickup for them, and he was basically a non-factor.
He was honestly a negative factor at times,
Yeah, like
taking a
that's
lot
what,
of
yeah.
dumb penalties.
Yeah, so I think I look at it and go, I think they need to make some changes defensively. Maybe if they let Steven Stamkos walk for some reason, even though he had 5 goals in the series.
Yeah, he was outstanding. He played fantastic.
I don't know why I don't know why he's not extended. I don't get it. But I mean, if he walks, then they have at least some money to play around with and mess around on the defensive side of
Yeah.
things to sort of tweak it a little. But they also have a lot of deals that are kicking in or have recently kicked in that really limit things for them.
Hagel's now officially up at 6.5 by 8. And I mean, I don't hate that deal by any means. I'm a huge Brandon Hagel fan, and I just think that they committed to the wrong defenseman in a lot of ways. Like Eric Chernak was really not good this year, and he's got, I think, 6 more years left at about 5.2.
2029.
Yeah, that's rough. And when you look at his results this year, I think he was the worst of all of the defensemen they had, like barring Matt Dumba. But like the guys that they had regularly, like Lilleberg, Perbix, Hedman, Sergachev, like those guys, I think he was bottom of that. And that's not great, obviously.
No.
But I never really agreed with the idea to pay Sergachev as much as they did, because he just hasn't proven it. Yeah, he can score a ton of points, but they haven't given him the time of day to put him on the power play. Like I think that needs to be the adjustment that happens next year in order for them to really maximize him, because that's where he does his damage. I think he had 70 points the year previous. Yeah, I picked him up in fantasy, and I'm like, okay, this is. I'm excited to have this guy, and they just put Victor Hedman back on that power play, and I felt like I was holding the bag of Safe Moon or something, some terrible coin.
Yeah,
not that I did, coin. Not that I did on it. I've never invested in crypto, but I just thought it'd be a funny reference to put in.
Yeah, it's like it's the thing of like. With so many hockey teams in the NHL, it's like, yeah, you might have the star power up front, but when they're not on the ice, who's on the ice? And to me, it's like when those top end guys aren't on the ice and it's the sort of secondary line of defense, that's when I sort of look at them and go, that's kind of where they couldn't really hang. And you have to rely way too much on your goaltender.
Yep.
So yeah, it's a tricky situation too, because Stamkos is coming off, like they have a sizable chunk of money coming off the books. I think you put down $12.5 million.
Yep. 12.5 million.
You can do stuff with that, but also in doing so, you lose Steven Stamkos,
or you can re-sign him. And I wouldn't expect him to have such a massive deal in terms of what it's going to be. I honestly, could he eat up half of that potentially, or a little more than half of that for like a 2-year deal or a 3-year deal? I could see it. Like,
I'm surprised at how little people are talking about how he still doesn't have a contract. Like, especially with how good he was in the playoffs, right? Like, imagine, John Tavares didn't have an extension in place going up into his expiry, right? Like, I think there would be a lot of people who would be like,
well, we'll find out next year.
We'll find out next year. But like the captain of your team, if John Tavares, who set up that overtime goal the other night, like he's been playing pretty well at the end of the series. Like if they went into the offseason and were like, no extent, I feel like everyone would be losing their minds. So I don't know. I think with Stamkos, I imagine he'll re-sign there.
Yeah, I think so too.
But also, if I'm him at this point, I'm going, oh, maybe July 1st, I just see what's out there. Like, that's what he did the first time around anyway, right? Like, he waited until July, and then on the day of, like, he listened to offers from everybody and then signed with Tampa Bay, I believe.
Yeah, but he hadn't won 2 Stanley Cups and made it to 3 straight finals at that time, right? Like, that's also a different story, I think. Like, when you look at it, he might go down as the best Lightning player ever for a little bit, at least.
I think so, yeah.
You could argue Kucherov, too.
Yeah.
At some point. But, like, right now...
There's been a lot of them.
Yeah, my whole life, there's always been 3 or more outstanding Tampa players, it feels like. So
You missed the golden days when they were just abysmal. But the LeCavalier St. Louis era was pretty cool. That was a fun team, with Tortorella and everything.
That's what I started watching a little bit. So I remember LeCavalier and St. Louis.
Yeah, it was a little rough before those guys showed up.
Yeah,
a little bit rough, with old man Denis Savard running around with his round helmet. Good times in those days.
But yeah, I don't think Tampa's cooked at all. I still think they're a really strong team. I think when you look at the Atlantic, it's so tough to even break into that top 4. But I think of all the teams that are going to potentially fall off the most, even though they're beating the Leafs right now, I think Boston has the most potential to drop off.
Yeah. Well, we'll get to them in a minute, but I don't know. Any final thoughts on Tampa? Like this series to me, it was like just you had a really good physical deep team against a pretty good offensive team with a little bit of a lack of depth and needed to rely on their goaltending a little bit, and it just didn't quite work out for them. But I do think that series was closer.
Play styles too, right? Because Tampa was a slower team. Like they even in their cup runs, they were a slower, more physical, methodical team. Like I really feel like when you look at some of these slower teams that I've talked about, like the Leafs and the Rangers, like I think they sort of try and base the way they've played off of Tampa, but they just don't do it. Especially the Leafs. Like the Leafs, you don't have a top 5 goalie to do the things that Tampa did. So I think that's been a problem
for sure. Well, I mean, we can move on to Carolina and the Islanders.
Sure,
I mean, this to me might have been maybe not the most lopsided series, but
probably was, though. In all honesty,
it was pretty close.
Other than maybe Edmonton, LA.
Yeah, like I mean, Carolina is very scary. I think that's the thing that they kind of showcased in this is like, even if they were like, it felt like even if they were losing, especially when they were losing, they are like, nope, we're just gonna win. We're gonna grind and bump and fight and win. That's just how this is gonna go. And the Islanders, I just don't think they could hang. Carolina had 14 even strength goals in 5 games, which is pretty good considering most teams in this playoff have like 9 or 10.
Yeah, and they played 5 games.
Yeah, and they played 5 games. Like, I don't know. This one was pretty lopsided. I thought the Islanders were a long shot anyway. And and especially up against a team like Carolina. Like, I think Carolina just has a few guys down the lineup that are like modern day versions of the Islanders guys at the bottom of their lineup that they've been playing for what feels like 20 years. You know, it's just like it's a different era now. And the Islanders, like, to me, the Islanders were more like in this series, the Matt Barzal show a lot of the time. You know, if he wasn't out there cooking, they were kind of struggling a little bit.
Or Pierangville had some nice did well in that series. A little bit.
Yeah,
especially
like
in the
Brock
early
Nelson.
going.
I thought Brock Nelson had some good moments, but you know, it just wasn't enough. You know, and and Freddie Anderson also deserves a ton of credit as well. You know, Varlamov was outstanding as well. He was ridiculous in the games that he played generally, but man, Freddie Anderson, like when he got asked to make some good saves, he was right there. Like, that's what I sort of picked up on was the goaltending in this series. Even though Carolina kind of scored in bunches here and there, the Islanders weren't making life very easy for Varlamov in the first place. And I thought he played pretty well. But again, it's just Carolina is just an overwhelming sort of tidal wave. Like Jake Gensel, I think, has added so much to that team.
Even Evgeny Kuznetsov.
I was just gonna say Kuznetsov. Like, besides that goal he scored, you know, that was fun. I love that. I love that shootout. Or the penalty shot.
That's what I'd say. Yeah,
love it. Amazing. But
took
even
12 seconds. 12 seconds.
Yeah, I love it. Good.
That's good playing stuff. With your food.
Yeah, exactly. And sometimes it's fun to play with your food.
Yeah, Mom. Stop telling me what to do.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I think Carolina is just a really deep and scary team. You know, I mean, they're going into a series against the other team in New York, and I think they match up pretty well with them. I think that's going to be a tough series for both teams. I might give the edge to Carolina, but that is going to be a fun one.
But we'll save it for the preview. Yeah.
What are your? Yeah, we'll save it. But what are your thoughts? What are your thoughts about this one, the Carolina Islanders series here?
Yeah, this I fully expected what we saw, pretty much. Yeah. Like, not exactly every detail, but I was pretty confident Carolina was gonna stomp them pretty hard for the most part, and that's kind of what happened in this series. And credit to the Islanders for getting into the playoffs and having a pretty magical run at the end to get in and be clinched before the final day as well. But when you match up against Carolina, it's so hard to beat them, even as a good team. Like, really good teams struggle against Carolina, and the Islanders are a fine team with really good goaltending and some really great pieces. But
yeah, it's the only series so far that I've nailed in my bracket challenge, Carolina in 5. So that's a plus.
Yeah,
I'll take that.
I think I'm in the same boat as you. Like, nailed the winner and game number.
Yeah. And yeah, I mean, I think with the Islanders, like, from here for them, I honestly don't know what their destiny is. I honestly don't really know. I
think it's going to be run it back kind of next year, because out of all these teams that have gotten eliminated, they have the least amount of cap space.
Yeah.
They don't have $10 million in cap space this season.
And I can't imagine if Lou Lamoriello is still there, that he's going to be like, yeah, maybe I think this is time where we start thinking about the future a little more. Like, they don't have anything in their prospect cupboard at all. They have nothing. Really.
Yeah, they have Delius, but that's about it.
Okay. Yeah, okay. maybe a middle pair defenseman. Maybe, right? Like, okay. But other than that, like, there's not much. They have a bunch of guys locked up. They have a bunch of RFAs that are going to need money. But are they like?
Yeah, Holmstrom needs a new contract. Wallstrom needs a new contract.
Yeah,
I mean,
like,
they
running it
be
back
that expensive, but maybe they move on from Wallstrom and try and get something out of that. But his value is pretty low, so I don't know what to do here.
Sorokin is going up to an $8.25 million contract,
and he's a great goalie.
For sure.
Just Varlamov got really hot down the stretch, and they rode the hot hand. And I have no doubts that Sorokin will bounce back and be an excellent goalie.
Yeah.
It's just, what do they put around this team? Because you have guys like, and Kyle Palmieri's a good player, but he's making $5 million.
Yeah.
John Gabriel Pajot, he's fine, but he's making $5 million.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So
Casey Cizikas, 2.5.
But Casey
Engvall,
Cizikas
3.
is fine, like
But he's 33. He plays a pretty tough style of game. Like,
I think we're gonna have to wait for like 2 years before we see what happens with the Islanders fully. Because I wouldn't be surprised if they kind of run it back similarly this year to run it back next year similarly to how they had it this year. But I don't know. I just don't think they're built to win.
Yeah, like I think they're built to be a bubble team for a few years. Like they have no other choice than to try to improve. But if they do improve, I don't know how they could. Like they don't really have a ton of money. They don't have a ton of young guys that are really making enough of an impact where you're like, yeah, these are the next generation of Islanders. Sure, they have Noah Dobson, okay, but that's one, right? And he's going to need a new contract eventually after next season. So I don't know. I see them as like, you're right. I think they have no other option except to go, you know what? Let's get a full season of Patrick Waugh and let's run it back and see what we can do. Canada just about scored a Michigan there. That was fun. But anyway, but yeah, I think that there's going to be more of this with the Islanders, right? Like they made it into the playoffs, even though they lost in overtime like 28 times this year.
16.
Okay.
But
close.
yeah, it's not that far away. It was pretty crazy, man. Them and Boston had like 15 and 16 OT losses.
Yeah, so I'm not sure. Like they're kind of like, I think they're kind of penned in as this sort of playoff bubble team. Like they're gonna be matched up if they do make the playoffs again next year. They're not gonna have an easy matchup. Like they're not gonna win their division. They're not gonna play a wild card team. I don't think they're gonna be up against another Hurricanes or the Rangers probably or something like that. And what improvements could they make to line up with those teams better? Like based on what I saw against Carolina. I honestly
the
don't.
Goaltending is outstanding.
Yeah, and pray that Carolina lets Jake Gensel walk and he goes to the West or something. Like I don't know, because Carolina also has the advantage of a lot of really good young players that are on the team now and on the way. That they'll just that doesn't matter. They might lose a guy here and there, but they've got the space to make something happen.
Yeah, man.
Yeah. Well, from one lopsided series to another, frickin' Winnipeg, Colorado. Colorado advances 4-1 over the Winnipeg Jets. Oh, what a series this was. I will admit, I botched this one in the preview. I thought Winnipeg had a real chance at keeping Colorado close, and they won game 1 barely. Yep. But oh my god!
And it took a spectacularly bad goaltending effort from Georgiev for them to do it, right?
Yeah,
like Colorado was the better team in this series
by far,
and fully through it all. Maybe this was the most lopsided series, as crazy as that sounds.
They scored 5 goals in every game or more. Yeah, right. Like that's ridiculous, and they scored 21 even strength of goals in 5 games. That's dumb. That's just absolutely dumb. It didn't matter that Georgiev was at first very bad to average, I would say, towards the end. He was
solid.
okay.
I would say he's solid throughout the series.
2 goals, 2 goals, 1 goal, 3 goals. Right? Fine. That he gave them a chance to win every game. But for me, the thing watching Carolina Winnipeg, and I watched, I think, every game except game 4, but they just Winnipeg had a very balanced team, I felt.
Yep.
But they weren't getting the offense that they needed from the other guys. They had a pretty good level of production from, I think it was Scheifele and
Connor Velarde.
Connor and Velarde. They did well, but Nick Ehlers had 2 points. Monahan, who was their big acquisition this year, had 1.
Tyler Toffoli, who also played on that line.
And Colorado had 8 guys that were a point a game, and Winnipeg had 2. The thing that I came away with that series watching it is going, okay, yes, goaltending can win you a series, sure. Like Connor Hellebuck up against, I don't know, some other team, I could see it. He could steal a few games here and there, maybe win the series if Winnipeg has a bit of an easier time. But holy crap, I was about to say a naughty word. Holy crap, the Colorado Avalanche are terrifying. They Cale Makar on the ice, he goes over the boards. It's automatic. He's automatic. Nathan McKinnon goes over the boards, automatic. Like you can't.
Valeri Nichushkin goes over the boards.
Valerie Nichushkin
and then the
doing his
choo-choo
thing.
train strikes.
Yep. Like the Winnipeg Jets, like they just had, from what I was watching, like defensively, no solutions really. Like the total goal differential was 13 in favor of Colorado. That's crazy.
This is
in
why
5
you
games.
build fast teams. This is why you do it, because you can
Colorado,
run rampant. And like Winnipeg's a good team.
Yeah,
they're good team.
Mm-hmm.
That's what's crazy about all of this. Connor Hellebuyck has had some problems in the playoffs recently that have been bad in terms of his save percentage. Like I think he's been below a 900 in his last 3 or 4 playoff series. So that's something that they got to figure out. Obviously, they've signed him to an 8-year deal, so he's got 7 years left, and he's going to probably win the Vezina this year, and rightly so. But he's got to figure it out when it comes to the playoffs a bit. Or it's got to be that Winnipeg's defense figures out how to properly defend around him too. Because when you have time to break down and pick apart what teams do in preparation for a series, you're going to get matched. Like people are going to counter you much more effectively when they're building and when their season's on the line for it. So I think that's got to be something that they do better. I still think that Winnipeg team is sick, but they've got a lot of things they got to do. Like so I pulled it. I have the list here. They've got a ton of expiring contracts. They do have $13 million to play around with, but Monahan is a UFA, Toffoli's a UFA, Laurent Brossoit is a UFA, Brendan Dillon's a UFA, Colin Miller UFA, Cole Perfetti's an RFA, and then Ville Heinola and Logan Stanley are RFAs. So that's stuff that they got to figure out. And there's obviously more. I'm just listing off some of the ones that I thought were a little more notable, but
sure.
Like they were a solid team, but I always looked at this series and I thought it would go to 7 and Colorado would win because I just didn't think that there'd be any way that Nathan McKinnon and the Colorado Avalanche would allow the embarrassment of last year and being bounced by the Seattle Kraken to just let them not advance.
Yeah.
Because that dude's so intense and so competitive. It's just like, the fire in that team, they don't like to go out. And you can tell that they get mad, they get pissed off, and they want to win bad. So, I didn't think it'd be a stomping, but man, that team's really good. Man, it's good.
Yeah, like it's just like you watch the Colorado Avalanche and like they just have horses, Like the Jets have a lot of, I don't know, maybe they're not horses, but they're good
really
ponies.
Good scoring guys.
Really good scoring guys, but Colorado just overwhelmingly with skill and pace and everything.
And then their D group's pretty great too. So.
Yeah, like everybody kind of really played well for Colorado. Winnipeg, I mean, I think Hellebuyck obviously wasn't, a Vezina caliber goaltender in this series, I don't think. But also, it's really hard to be a Vezina caliber goaltender when you're facing down Nathan McKinnon for 25 minutes a night and Cale Makar for 28 minutes a night or whatever it was, right? Mikko Rantanen, like those, and on the rush, that team is devastating.
They're huge, they're pretty big,
ridiculous.
They're big and fast, which is lethal combination.
Yeah,
like
really,
Mikko
really
Rantanen
tough.
Dude, Mikko Rantanen's so sick. Valeri Nichushkin's so sick. I can wax poetic about the Colorado Avalanche because they're so damn good. They really are.
I definitely underestimated. I mean, I didn't think Hellebuyck would be an 860 goaltender for the series, and I definitely underestimated just how much Colorado turns it on in the playoffs. Like they are scary. Like we can talk a bit about them in the second round coming up, but They changed my mind about them. I came in thinking, they're a really good team. They have as good a chance as any to win the Stanley Cup. But now I'm sitting there going, if they end up in like a conference final against like Edmonton, that is going to be an all-timer. Like to me, that's going to be one that like those two teams going at it. It would be incredible based on how both of those teams have done. And like Colorado just looks ridiculous. So I don't know. And for Winnipeg, they have a lot of stuff to play around with. I think they have a lot of things to think about, but it's not like, oh my goodness, this was a disaster, we need to blow it up. It's more, they have young players on the way that have played really well.
Mm-hmm.
They've been drafting well. I think they need to sort of stay the course, they're losing a big chunk of money on their defense group. I think Brendan Dillon. I thought Colin Miller, the one game there for Winnipeg, played pretty well. And he's an expiring guy. Dylan DeMello is also an expiring guy. Maybe those are some cheap names you could keep, and maybe instead of Brendan Dillon, find something else to do. I don't know exactly what that will look like. I think that Cole Perfetti, like, you got to hope that he takes a step forward and becomes sort of the premier guy, because I think he only played in a game or two in this series, if I'm not mistaken. Like, he didn't play every game. He played one and only 11 minutes, right? And so if you have a 22-year-old top 10 pick or whatever, still kind of struggling to sort of make an impact on that team, you got to hope that he, takes that step next year. But for Winnipeg, I don't think it's like a disaster, but it's definitely something where you kind of have to go, okay, like, this is, again, it's like the Islanders, right? Like, this isn't going to get any easier. Colorado's not going to get worse. So, Edmonton's probably not going to get worse. So it's like, well, okay, we got to make sure that we can sort of hang with Colorado. And I don't know how you do that, honestly, because it's like, well, you can't just go out and get a Cale Makar.
You can't just go out and get three top 10 players. Like, that's the other thing. When do you draw the line of, because a lot of the time what I like to do is I like to go through the two teams that are facing each other, and I just start listing the best players off from both teams and then rank them.
Right.
Where does that stop? Like, Nathan McKinnon and Cale Makar for sure are ahead of everybody. Yep. I think Mikko Rantanen's also ahead of everybody.
Yep.
Then is Connor Hellebuck the next name you put on there?
I would think so.
Yeah, and
that's my thought.
We're at 4, and Colorado has 3 of the best players in this, or has the 3 best players in this series.
Yep.
Right? So that's kind of been my thinking with Colorado the whole time. It's like, they have 3 top 10 players in the league.
Yeah.
They're disgusting, and they play insane, and I really wouldn't be surprised if they repeat as champions. They're just that good, man.
Yeah. No, I know. I wouldn't be surprised either. They looked very, very scary, and I don't know. I don't think it was because Winnipeg was bad.
Nope.
I don't think that's what it was. I think
Colorado's just great.
Yeah, like, I know some Jets people are like losing their mind about this, but and on one hand, I could look at it and go,
been looking at Jesse Pollock's Twitter? Is that what you've been doing?
Well, no, I'm always fascinated by, like, I know Reddit is like a cesspool, but it is really interesting going on team specific subreddits, because I think fans are so focused on their own team that they don't really contextualize the opponent that much, and they just sort of judge their own team. Like, look at Leaf fans, right? It's always about how terrible they are, but never like, well, this team played well, right? Like, and I'm only using the Leafs because I live here, and like, you're a Leaf guy, and like, it's always very focused on your own team.
All of you viewers,
and it does that too.
We find it very funny to do that,
right? But I go on, like, when teams get eliminated or something, like, I pop into the subreddits for these teams and lurk around and just see what the vibe is. And I mean, with Winnipeg fans, like, a lot of them are blaming the coaching staff, and are blaming Hellebuck for like not really showing up, and and part of that probably is true, right? Like, part of that is true, but on the other hand, it's like, these are the defending Stanley Cup champions, and they have some of the best players in the world all on the same team, and they definitely have the most talented defenseman on the entire planet just running you over every night. Like, what are you supposed to do? So I don't think it's horrible for the Jets, but it is something to think about, where you're like, okay, we have a pretty good team. We can make the playoffs. Great. We're the Jets. We need to make the playoffs to make money, for sure. So how do we make sure that we can match up to a team like that a little bit better? And I don't think the answer is we need to be more big and physical and tough, right? Like, that's not the answer.
Well, here's another thing I'm going to pose.
Yeah.
Is Mark Scheifele a 1C to you? Like a true number 1 center? Because I think he's fringe.
If not, I think he's close. Yeah, I think if not, he's close. I think in a pinch, absolutely. But I think you need another one with him. I think you need him at least a 1B, to sort of be a 1-2 punch that's balanced.
Yep.
Maybe they go out and maybe the Flames are done with Nazem Kadri or something, right? And there's a guy that might.
Well, they have Brad Lambert.
Yeah, true. They have Lambert. And honestly, with Lambert's sort of speed and skill, that might be something that would help them in a team against a team like Colorado, right?
I think
it would have helped.
I think that's why I'm not worried for Winnipeg.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
have really good young players coming up, and they have a really solid team right now. Stay the course
Yeah.
and just figure out how to get Connor Hellebuck working in the playoffs properly. And if you can do that,
And,
they're going to go deep, and
and
they're a
the
good team.
the good thing about them too is that the core, while they're not super young, they're not 35, right? Like the guys on Washington, they're 33, 34, 35 years old. Winnipeg, Kyle Connor 27, Josh Morrissey 28, Velarde 24, Ehlers 27. They have a few more years of a good group of players to turn around and go, okay, like we got something here. You got Hellebuck in net, who knows how long he lasts, but he's only 30. So who knows where they go from here, but I definitely wouldn't be hitting the panic button at all. And I don't know. I think in general things are okay for them. It's just Colorado's the better team. They were just better.
Yes, sir.
Edmonton, LA. Edmonton puts the LA Kings out of the season 4-1. That
Third
game
year in
last
a row,
night,
man. It's gotten progressively worse.
it
7
has.
games,
Yeah.
6 games, now 5. What's it going to be next year?
I mean,
sweep?
yeah. No, I mean, I don't know. I look, I've been an LA Kings person all year, but again, it's similar to that Winnipeg Colorado series. I mean, it was a little different though, I think, but it's just like the Edmonton Oilers just were overwhelming for the Kings to handle. The Kings just weren't getting the same bounces I feel like they've gotten in the past few years. The LA Kings had 0 power play goals, which no other team in the playoffs managed to accomplish. Toronto even has scored a power play goal.
Yes.
And their penalty kill was the
One
worst.
taken away.
Yes. So they had the worst special teams by quite a wide margin of all the teams in the playoffs. So that's automatically not going to work, especially when Edmonton, Edmonton's was so good. Like I looked it up. The Kings had the goal advantage at even strength. They scored 13 goals at even strength, and Edmonton had 9. And so at even strength, like Skinner was a net negative goaltender, and Cam Talbot was a little better, but also not great. And so for the Edmonton Oilers, like, yeah, Connor McDavid had 12 points, and McDavid had 10, and Bouchard had 9.
Draisaitl 10?
Or sorry, yeah, Draisaitl 10,
Okay.
Hyman 7 goals, but like so much of that came on the power play, which is crazy. That's just crazy to me. I don't know if that's sustainable, because I feel like the whistles might get put away a little bit more as the
Possible.
playoffs go, but I'm not super concerned, because the Edmonton Oilers they're a bit of a wagon, like especially with that top unit. The Kings I felt couldn't really hang. I think it was, if you took away special teams, I think that series was a lot closer, but doesn't matter. At the end of the day,
I honestly
wins.
think that Edmonton was just doing a lot to draw penalties too. Like that's the other thing. Like they were playing better at 5-on-5 too, right? They were just getting a lot of good chances, and LA had to take penalties, and it just resulted in a lot of goals scored for Edmonton, because they get their opportunities, and they're the best, always up close to the best, if not the best, every year power play.
Yeah,
it's just disgusting.
It is,
and I think it has a lot to do with the difference in pace between McDavid and Draisaitl. You have McDavid, who just zooms around, and Draisaitl is a bit more slower, methodical. And you have guys like Zach Hyman, who go to the net front, and Evan Bouchard, who can rip it. So they have so many different weapons that make that power play just phenomenal and such a challenge to deal with, and they come at you at different speeds and change the pace all the time. There's so much dynamism or whatever it is. In that group, and I think that's why they're constantly so good. I think it's similar with Tampa. Like Kucherov and Point have that similar dynamic between McDavid and Draisaitl, where it's one super fast player in Braden Point and a more slower, methodical player in Kucherov.
Yeah, I agree. I think the Edmonton Oilers, they've gotten better as a team. I think they're built better as a team than they have been in years prior.
Yeah, this is the best
going
Oilers
out and
team.
getting, like Ekholm, a full year of Ekholm has done really well for them. Henrique, I thought, played pretty well in this series.
Bouchard just continues to score.
Yeah,
and that's
Bouchard just keeps scoring. Yep, that's his thing. 8 of his points, or 5 of his points came on the power play, but still, for even strength.
I think
you know,
he leads all defensemen in the past 2 playoffs
yeah.
in points too, which is pretty nuts for
Yep.
him. So he's been doing well.
Yeah, it's impressive. I mean, Edmonton had 5 guys with more points than the LA Kings top scorer. And that's going to win you the series, right? Like that'll win you a series, no problem, especially when one of them is Connor McDavid and another one is Leon Draisaitl. And so for me, I don't, I was a little bit surprised in a way because I look at the Kings and I said, okay, they're physical. They have a pretty deep lineup of good players. I think their defense group is also pretty good. Maybe they'll be able to sort of hold off the Oilers for a while. And there were a couple of games there where the Oilers, like they were taking it to the Oilers pretty well. The puck was just not going in the net. And for whenever they would take a penalty, the Oilers would score. And whenever they got a power play, the Kings wouldn't. And that made the difference, right? So so thinking about the Kings in the future, I mean, I don't think it's panic mode either for them. I think
get a goalie.
Yeah. Again, run it back and try another goalie. Cam Talbot is probably not the answer.
Or David Riddick.
David Riddick. Yeah, like David Riddick had some really amazing moments, but again, like it wasn't phenomenal.
Yep.
And again, I don't know if it's going to be Quinton Byfield, but like they also kind of lack that X factor player, that guy who is going to, they're like the Carolina Hurricanes light, where it's like they have a lot of good players on their team, but who's the guy that's going to like go over the boards and be your X factor? Like I think Kempe's close-ish to that, but not enough in the playoffs against a team like Edmonton, especially.
Yet.
Fiala wasn't that, I don't think. I think their defense group is fine. I think they may have been hoping that was Pierre-Luc Dubois, but I mean, he had 1 point in 20 penalty minutes and played 15 minutes a night. Like that's not for $8 million. That's just a non-starter to me.
Yep.
So I don't know what the Kings are going to look like next year. They have a ton of cap space to play with.
21 million, I think.
And only a couple of guys that really need new contracts that will cost a lot of money. Quinton Byfield is one of them.
They got to figure out what they're going to do with Arvidsson.
Yeah, I imagine Blake Lizotte, they're going to keep him. I've always liked Blake Lizotte. Yep. If they don't keep him, I'm happy to pick him up. Jordan Spence has been quite good for them as well, in more limited minutes, but again, a little bit limited in the playoffs this year. But man, I don't know. Like the Kings have a tough road. Because it's the same thing. Because this is not going to stop. If they make the playoffs again, it's entirely possible that the Edmonton Oilers are on the other side again. So how are they going to find a way to match up against a team like that better? Because like you said, every year it seems to be getting more and more further apart between them and Edmonton. And I don't really know. I mean, unless it's like Quinton Byfield comes back and is even better next year and he's more of like a 80, 90 point guy, like first line center type guy. Yeah, maybe that's a thing that happens. I think it's possible. I don't know if he'll be that offensive, but his defensive game has really improved, I think, and that's been a huge plus for them.
Better than Tim Stützle will.
Let's not go there. But yeah, I think they've got lots of potential. They've got lots of, again, they have some good young players out there that are sort of on their way in. It's just they're in that tough spot where it's like, yep, they've got a good team, but when they match up against a true contender like Edmonton, it gets a lot more difficult, and they don't have the goaltending. So what do you do from here? I don't know. What do you got?
I think they just stand pat, get a little better in terms of the goaltending, try and make small upgrades here and there. But I think for the most part, you don't change a whole lot, and you just you try and work with Pierre-Luc Dubois to get him at a more consistent level, because when he's at his best, he's insane. But I think that's kind of the way they got to go about it.
Got to get him a sports psychologist or a fleet of them or something, because again, watching that series, I did not notice Pierre-Luc Dubois much.
I noticed him going in the penalty box.
Sure, but I didn't really know, like, he was not a very noticeable player. Like, and Ananze Kopitar also, like, for a period there, I forgot he was on the Kings.
Yeah.
Like, I went, okay, he's starting to get over the hill. So what, I think next season is going to be really interesting for them. Definitely one of those, like, let's see what this team can actually do type seasons, because if it's not a step forward, like, they might need to not rebuild, but think about, what would a team without Adrian Kempe look like? And maybe we do build around Byfield and such for 2026 or whatever it is in 2027. And because it's like we can't, like, again, it's how do we line up against these contending teams? And I honestly don't have all the answers really, because I don't know how I would go about it, but I don't know. You gotta, the goaltender is a big step forward though. If they can figure out something in net that works,
Yep,
I think that would be a big step forward.
Well then, let's get on to because we're at about 3 now, and we still have 3 series to go through. So
we don't have that many questions anyway, so we can just keep talking.
All right. So let's get to the series that are still going on.
So where do you want to start? I'll let you control where we start on this.
We're going to start with the series that's happening tonight. So
okay, so Boston, Toronto.
Boston, yeah.
So if you're not aware, Boston's up 3-2 on Toronto. They were up 3-1. I was actually at game 3, which, you know, was fun until it wasn't. But no, I mean, I don't know. I mean, where do you want to start with this one? Because I think there's a lot going on here.
Yep. Well, Austin Matthews has been ruled out, so that's not
Yep,
great.
he's out for game 6, so the Leafs are going to win. They're going to go to game 7. Like, this is how it's going to go.
Oh,
you know,
come on, Will. Okay.
It's either that or they're eliminated. So
no, but
you know,
you're setting up this narrative that it's going to be the exact same as always. You and every other Leafs fan that are just that act like they're going to do the same thing every single year. And yeah, a lot of times they do, okay? But don't ruin this for me. Let me just live in the world where, hey, they could take this game and then maybe take the next one. But honestly, I think looking at this series, I feel like we kind of nailed it. Other than our prediction in terms of how many games it would take and that the Leafs would be winning at this point. But I think special teams have been huge, and that's been a problem for the Leafs.
Huge, yeah.
Goaltending has been outstanding for Boston, and the Leafs have had trouble dealing with that. Last game, they looked really good, though. I always just have a problem with how slow they end up playing still. Like, that style of play doesn't... Like, I don't think that style of play wins a Stanley Cup, truthfully. Like, their slow pace. But you can tell that that team is so talented, and they could easily put it together if they played faster, I think. And it's just frustrating that they don't. I think they win tonight, but I could be wrong. And honestly, it kind of doesn't matter. I just want Sheldon gone, man. Please put somebody in who's going to make this team faster, man.
Well, that's the thing, right? Like with Toronto and watching this series, when they are moving and thinking quickly, they are the better team. Like a lot of people,
it's not even close.
Like, again, I went into the Boston Bruins subreddit and was reading about what people were saying about how Boston was playing, and I was at hockey last night and talking to a Bruins fan who was there about it, and he was like, I think we just played, you know, we played down to them, we played slow, we were scared. And to me, it's like that whole thing about like, but is it that, or is it just that the other team really turned on the Jets and that there's just a mismatch now? Like the thing about Toronto, and the thing about Toronto in this series, but this is not the first time this has happened. Like when you look holistically at both teams, they should win this series, right? Like when they are close, when they are playing, and the first couple of games were winnable. They played like morons in the first game and got killed. Then in the second one, they won barely, but they won.
Austin Matthews had the masterclass.
Yeah, I was at game 3, and that game, like the thing that drives me nuts about Toronto is I was there and people were complaining about how quiet the crowd was. I think they're all insane. The first period of that game, like up until that Trent Frederick goal, that place, the Scotiabank Arena was insane. Like it was the place was buzzing.
Yeah.
But as soon as something bounced the wrong way, as soon as something went the wrong way in that game, they were flatlined for the rest of the game.
Toronto fans are fragile, not quiet, but fragile.
The team also completely flatlined for the rest of the game.
Yeah,
and so it's like from there, it's like, well, what do you do from there? And then game 4 was worse, the worst game of the series for Toronto.
Oh, it was horrible.
But then game 5, but the good thing about game 4 that I saw was like the last 10 minutes. It's like that's the frustrating thing with Toronto. You know what they're capable of. You know that you see it, right? Like when they are buzzing, they are a very difficult team to stop, right? But when they're not, a team like Boston can just get behind them all night and get chances against them.
And that's why I advocate so intensely for more speed, because I feel like they could buzz a lot more and ramp up the intensity level so much faster and get into games quicker, because if they were to just play faster. And I think that is the limiting thing that's holding them back. I think they could win the Stanley Cup, maybe not this year, but next year if they just played a lot faster.
Yeah, I mean, I think at the end of the day, like, I mean, for tonight, Game 6, I mean, I'm not just being a bit of a jackass, but like I do think that I am, but I do think Toronto will win tonight. Like, the only reason they wouldn't win tonight is because they're the Toronto Maple Leafs, right? Like they have not won a game at home in the playoffs since I was like 2 years old. Like it's
no.
No, I'm extrapolating.
Okay.
I'm not serious.
Fine.
But the point is, they're on a serious losing streak winning at home, and it does seem like when the crowd in Toronto is on a razor's edge of expectations. They know the team is good, and when the team starts playing like they sometimes do, where they are not playing well, the whole place goes dead, and I think the team feeds off of that. And it's really hard to dig yourself out of that hole. But that is not, to me, that's not an excuse, right? Like that's not an excuse. It's an explanation. And but I think, I mean, I am positive that the place will be on fire tonight, not literally, but metaphorically. I mean,
it'll be loud out the gate. It'll be loud out the gate. But if something bad happens, it could snowball and it could die. Spiral out of control and just be over really quickly.
Yeah, and if I'm Toronto, the message is pretty simple, right? Like it's 2 games. Forget about all the games that have happened before. We got to win tonight and then win another one. That's it. That's all you got to do. Yep. And then everybody, like the whole story then changes, right? Like,
the narrative already changed a little bit because Boston blew a 3-1 lead last year, right? And it started with an overtime loss.
And I honestly, like, that's the thing about Toronto and their fans and the media here that like drives me the most crazy. Like, you can critique the team, you can critique the way they played, you can critique individual players, and they deserve it, right? Like they have had moments in this series where we're going, what in the hell is happening? But the thing that drives me nuts is like, well, I guess it's over. Like, I guess we fire the coach, and I guess we do this, and I guess this happens, and Mitch Marner can be traded to Utah.
You see the giant tweets of this needs to happen right now.
And it's like, well, that's like, to me, that's like loser. Like, it's people on TV who complain about fans and stuff being losers, but they are the losers in that situation.
They're
it's
part
like,
of
well,
that soup.
I guess it's all over. Like, I guess it's over. Like, even like Chris Johnston is like, it feels like it's over. It feels like this is the end. He even wrote an article that was like, this is the end of the Toronto Maple Leafs as we know it. It's like, okay, cool. Like, no wonder nobody wants to play in Toronto, right? Like, no wonder it's ridiculous. Because people are insane. And it's like, and then they go out and win Game 6, and then all of a sudden it's like they showed life. This is the team we all knew they could be. They showed some life. It's like, no, 12 hours ago, you were saying that the whole world was on fire and that everything was coming to an end. So it's like,
hey, and it might tonight.
Relax.
It's very possible.
It might. But, okay, so you're the big Leaf guy. Like, if they go out tonight and they lose, and it's, say, 4-3 in overtime, and it was like a tight game. Let's say Boston ties it with 2 minutes left on a power play. Is that like a sign where you go blow it all up and start over?
No, I've been saying it for years that and I've said it like 5 times already this stream. They just need to play faster. Just ramp up the intensity. Have guys that play more like Nick Robertson. Maybe have them be a bit stronger. He's still an awesome player, but it's like have guys that play with that tenacity, that play with that FU energy, that screw you. We're going to play our game. We're not countering. We're not going to make the same level of adjustments that we normally would make in a series. This is our game, and you're going to be forced to play it. And that's what Florida does, and that's why they killed Tampa. That's why they killed Tampa. That's why Colorado killed Winnipeg.
If it is over tonight, the only thing I would say, really, is I wouldn't say you have to trade a guy like Mitch Marner, but you absolutely need to figure out what's going on in his brain. Like,
make him
the
play
way
faster.
that he,
I still think it's that.
And that's,
I still
but
think
that's
it's that.
Mitch Marner Game 5 was great.
Yeah.
He played way better than the previous games because he was moving his feet. He was moving his feet and playing with a lot of skill. And so to me, I look at it and go, well, you don't want to trade any of these players.
You kind of
don't
can't,
want to.
Honestly.
You can't. Yeah, and you can't. Like, everyone knows that everybody wants Mitch Marner out of town, so why would you give them a fair offer?
Yeah, also,
so,
you're
but
not
but to me, hey, one minute, like 1 sec. So like I look at Toronto though, and the reasonable thing, the only thing I could say if I'm Toronto is if tonight is the coaching thing has to be rebooted. Like, it's been long enough with Sheldon Keefe. Like, he's one of the longest tenured coaches in the league, if not the most now.
He's fifth.
Okay, he's up there.
He's up there.
Like, so to me, it's like this has happened way too many times, where the thing about Toronto is they are not a good team unless they have to be. And to me, that's a motivation thing. Like, and I am very, very tired of opening up my social media feeds here and seeing Sheldon Keefe going, yeah, you can't fault them. You can't fault the guys. They're trying. We're doing stuff. We're doing whatever. It's like, no, like, why are you doing, like, I guess you're doing it to keep the media off your back, but that doesn't help you. So to me, it's like, well, what are you saying to them behind closed doors? Like, how is the dynamic between the coach and the players on this team? Because I watch a guy like Rod Brindamore in the dressing room talking to his team. If Rod Brindamore were my coach, I'd be out of my mind every time I stepped on the ice, because he just has this way of like, he has this energy about him that is not toxic. I was going to say toxic, but it's like entrancing.
Is what
intoxicating. Yeah, I think is what I meant. Yeah, like, it's entrancing, and it sucks you in, and it makes you like, I want to do it for him, right? Like, he's telling me to do something, and I want to do it because I respect him, and I deserve respect from him too. But like with Toronto, I don't know what the dynamic is. And every time Sheldon Keefe is on camera and you see behind the scenes stuff with him in the locker room, it's pretty subdued and it's pretty quiet in there. And it's pretty like, there's not much energy going on in there. And it's like, well, I think that's a thing that has to change.
Prepare to go to war. That's the thing. Like, sports
you're
are
riding
modern
into battle,
war, man.
It's Lord of the Rings, Return of the King battle time. Like,
we need the Russell Crowe speech at the beginning of Gladiator, where he's rallying the troops to fight the Germans. So
to me, like, that's the only thing. Because also it's like, well, they've got, like, against Florida last year, it's like, okay, you won a round, but at the end of the day, you won 5 games when you need to win 16, and you went down 3-1 again. So it's like, okay, but how many times can we do this? Like, how many times can we allow a coach who is the leader of the team, the guy who motivates the team, allow him to put the team in such a deep hole time and time and time again? Like, even if he's a good coach, X's and O's style or whatever, I look at that and I go, yeah, but like, we need the guys to get results for us. And I don't know, maybe you can't lay it all at the feet of the coach, but goodness gracious, like, another 3-1 series deficit. They have to claw their way back again, and they're doing their darndest to do it. But if this is it tonight, that's the only thing I can point to and go, that's a legitimate thing that needs to be shaken up. And I know he just signed an extension, but the fact that people were completely losing their minds and going crazy about the future of the team before the season's even done, I don't know. This series also could have ended in Game 5, right? Boston had quite a few chances in overtime.
It was overtime.
In overtime, man. Yeah. Boston had chances, and Joseph Woll right there,
He
So
played well. Goaltending hasn't been the problem in this series, I don't think, for the Leafs at all.
Nope.
Though Joe Woll in his one game was better than Sammy, I think, has been all series, but it's neither here nor there.
The biggest thing is they have a pathetic power play. With the types of players on that team, their power play has been pathetic.
Yep.
Their penalty kill is also the only team worse at both power. They were second worst in the playoffs at power play and penalty kill than the LA Kings. And all of the teams at the bottom of those metrics are the ones that are getting eliminated. So they better hope that without Austin Matthews, something happens on the power play tonight, because it's going to be a lot more difficult, But also, I get the feeling tonight the whistles are going away. Like that last game, you could kind of see it, that things were getting a little bit more chippy and physical, and rule breaky and like real sort of playoff hockey is kind of creeping in a little bit.
So Ryan Reeves masterclass is what you're telling me.
Sure. But
Max
yeah,
Domi
I don't know.
masterclass, maybe.
I don't know. I mean, we've talked about this series already quite a while,
Yep.
but like I'm fascinated to see what'll happen tonight, and
I'm scared, excited.
Yeah.
I just want to see them win, man. They're the better team. It's frustrating. This series should be within their reach tonight, but it's not. But hopefully they win, and
yeah,
that's just how I feel.
Yeah.
But let's move on.
Yeah, someone in the comments asked about Dallas Vegas, and that's the one next. So
yep, let's do it.
Dallas Vegas is up 3-2. I think by this point the series should be over. Like Dallas has been, from what I've seen, just again like relentless.
They've been awesome.
They've been awesome. Again, that deep roster that they have seems to match up really well against Vegas. They've been out shooting Vegas more than any other team in the playoffs has been out shooting their opponents. And they're getting performances from a bunch of different players. Like Wyatt Johnston, like, hello, welcome to the NHL, buddy.
I was going to ask
Holy
you, Will,
smokes.
do we both think it's fair to say that the Dallas Stars have won the 2021 NHL draft already?
Nah.
Already?
No way.
Logan Stankoven and Wyatt Johnston, man. That's pretty crazy.
Honestly, I would love to talk to whoever ran that draft and go, what was the deal with Wyatt Johnston? Because he didn't play a game. He played in the under 18s that year, but was one of the few players who played 0 games that year for a team. And they drafted him. He was the only player who didn't play a single game for a team that year in the first round. I remember liking him with Windsor the year before the pandemic. I thought he was a good young player for them, just a little small and a little slight on his feet, but the skill was there and the shot was there. There's a lot of good stuff there.
Then he got big.
and then he filled out, and now he's one of those guys that even if you have a guy all over him, if he's in front of the net or in scoring area or something like that, a guy up checking him or tying up his stick or something, he is so lightning quick with his hands that it's like a loose puck for a tenth of a second. He can get his stick on it and put it wherever the goalie isn't, right? Like he just has that quickness to him that it's devastating in the playoffs because even if you physically overpower him, he can wrestle his way to the puck and get something done, which that just is incredible to me. Like that's such a useful thing to have with a skilled guy like that. So, but it's not just him, right? Like they're getting a very, very good output from a lot of players. And Jake Ottinger's been pretty good too, like in general. So
it's been solid.
I recently, they've won 3 in a row. They took both away in Vegas. That's not an easy thing to do. Winning both games away is not easy. And now they're going back to Vegas. And I don't know.
2-0, right? Like that's part of it.
Yeah. Like they came back strong. I thought the game 5, like these games have been close on goals, but whenever I watch these games, I'm going, okay, yeah, like when Vegas has, say, a Jack Eichel on the ice, yeah, like he can push back the Stars. He can move his feet and get into the offensive zone and make stuff happen, and he has been. He's of both teams in this series, he's the leading scorer. But when but other than that, I look at Dallas and go, okay, but like the depth of the Dallas Stars just is better. They might have Jack Eichel, they might have Jonathan Marchessault, but the Dallas Stars are rolling out Logan Stankoven on the third line. It's like, yeah, he's been an impactful player, but besides that beautiful play that he had last night to put the goal.
I still think this. Yo, go ahead.
No, I lost my train of thought mid sentence. No, but anyway, he's been good. Yes, yeah.
Yeah. So I think Vegas, like they're still a good team. And they haven't been playing super well in this series. And I don't know if there's injury problems going on with them because it's like, you bring back Mark Stone pretty late in the season. They also have guys that just are naturally more injury prone too, which is why we always accuse them of cap circumvention every year.
Right.
But I think there are legitimate injury problems with that team to an extent that might be holding them back. And hey, they had a really great run last year too, and obviously they won the Cup. But Dallas is also just, like, these are two really great teams, and I still believe that. I do think Dallas has a bit more star power on their team than Vegas does. Like, Vegas has a lot of really, really good, solid top 6 guys and middle 6 guys that you can plug and play. Like, Chandler Stevenson's a guy who hasn't really been that great this year, but
Yeah.
he's been a phenomenal player for them in years prior, right?
Mm-hmm.
William Karlsson's great. Jonathan Marchessault can score. I just think
And
that they're like Dallas has more star power, and I think that at the end of the day is the difference. Like a Rupe Hintz, a Jason Robertson, he's been awesome. The third line of Dallas has been phenomenal.
yep.
It's
And
what
through
it
it
is.
all, Joe Pavelski hasn't scored a point.
No, he's not been
So
good.
they don't seem to need the guy who has helped them out a ton in the playoffs before. And when you look at Vegas, like Petrangelo, Martinez, Theodore, Mantha, Carlson, all zeros across the board. And I don't know if that's going to change, because whenever I watch these games, I'm going, Dallas has the advantage. Like they are playing better than the Vegas Golden Knights. And even if Vegas takes game 6, even if they take game 6 and push it to 7, which I think is entirely possible, especially because the game is in Vegas, I don't know. Dallas at home, with the way that they've been playing and the momentum that they would have, even if they lost tonight, I get the feeling.
It's, tomorrow, actually.
Sorry, yeah, tomorrow. But I get the feeling that the Dallas Stars take this one. I hope they do, for the sake of my bracket. Also, if they do it in 7, then I nailed it. Great.
I need 6.
But I think Vegas tomorrow is just going to come out guns blazing with whatever they have left in the tank, because they know, right? Like they I don't know what that team's going to look like next year if they lose tonight and go forward. I mean, we'll talk about it probably once the series is over, one way or the other, but I don't know. Yeah.
It's going to be fun. That might be the best game of the entire playoffs, like game 6, because you're going to have a really motivated Dallas team and a really motivated Vegas team. And I think that could be just an insane game, and I'm excited to watch it.
Yeah, game 6s rule. I love game 6s. They're always fun. The 5, 6, 7 games, love them. I mean, game 7 sells itself, but like games when teams are up against the wall, always fun, and there's a mismatch.
Game 7's not my favorite for obvious reasons.
we don't need to talk about that. We don't need to revisit trauma. Okay, and I guess we can close it out with Vancouver Nashville, which I have, the most low event hockey of all of the series.
Dude,
like the shot totals are very low,
series.
but I've loved it. I've loved watching that series. Like, I don't know why, but there's just like, it feels like that series, they're just trading chances, but like not very often, but in a good way. I don't know how to explain it, but I have the series going to 7, and I think it's going to go to 7. Like, I think it's absolutely going to go to 7.
Yeah, man. We were talking about it before the show. We're just like, God, how is Vancouver winning this series?
Like Thatcher Demko's even hurt, right?
No,
like
Casey
DeSmith is doing his thing.
No, not even him, man. That's crazy.
Like they're getting goaltending somehow, some way. Their top unit is still pretty good, firing pretty well. Brock Besser with that clutch goal. Quinn Hughes has been
that a hat trick goal too? I think it was.
Yeah, I think so. Quinn Hughes maybe a little banged up, maybe, but he doesn't certainly look like it. Like, he's been bumped around quite a bit. Dakota Joshua's having a really good series as well, just as a checking guy who's been productive.
Rocks, man. He's so good.
Yeah. I know you can kind of meme on Elias Pettersson a little bit based on this series, but like, he's had a few good chances as well, but you really I think you want to see more out of him, obviously. But Nashville, I don't even know what it is that makes Nashville such an advantageous player or an advantageous team at 5-on-5 against Vancouver right now. Like, they are controlling a pretty wide amount of the shots, generally, especially earlier on in the series. So, and I don't know exactly how, right? Like, I really don't. Philip Forsberg has been really good. Roman Yossi's been really good.
It's because they block everything. Vancouver just doesn't get a ton of stuff to the net because Barry Trotz and Andrew Burnett. Like, I know Barry Trotz is the GM, but of course he's helping him a little bit. Like, you're talking about one of the greatest coaches of all time as your GM to lend an ear to a really good coach.
Yeah, that's true.
And it's like the Islanders of the Tampa Bay Lightning dynasty that they had to run into. Like that team that just battled and was able to block a ton of shots. They were able to really push Tampa to the edge and give them a massive fight before they got to the finals. And Tampa won all those series, like those 2 series, but the Islanders of that time, and I really do believe it was Barry Trotz that won them, like got them to back-to-back conference finals. And I think we're seeing something similar.
Yeah.
To what we got there. And you can look at the series and think that Nashville should be winning because of the way it's been coached, and I wouldn't disagree.
They're just out shooting Vancouver across the games by 30 shots on net across all the games combined. That doesn't sound like much, but that's a sizable chunk.
That's
30%.
Yeah.
Right? A third. That's a third basically. That's hard to counter, right? And I think Nashville's been getting good chances. I do think Nashville is a bit more like trying to be a little bit like Carolina, give the puck to your defenseman, put it on net. You got Josi, you've got even a Jeremy Lozon out there just popping the puck on net. Then you sort of follow it up with the greasy stuff in front and hopefully something goes in. But I don't know. I honestly don't know which way the series is going to go. I mean, if UC Saros comes out and stands on his head and takes them to game 7, they're at home. I think Nashville, Bridgestone Arena, always just another one of those arenas that's just rocking. And I get the feeling that that's going to give them a lot of momentum. And this has been Vancouver, though, all season long, really, is like they've been a team that just finds a way to win. The numbers aren't in their favor. They get great goaltending. Their top unit is great, but otherwise it's been a bit of a mixed bag. But it's Nashville. Like that, I didn't think the Nashville Predators would be giving it this hard, but it's close. Like it's been a lot of fun watching them.
Yeah, man. Selfishly, I want to see Nashville win this because I want the chaos. Like I'll be honest. I know a lot of people root against my team, and that's fine, but I have teams I root against too.
I mean, I have Vancouver. I have Vancouver winning.
So do I.
Yeah, but I think based on how this series has gone, like it's gonna be one where I think it's gonna be a bounce goes one way. This could be one. This could be one where it's like, because some of the endings of these games has been out of control.
Wild.
Stupid. Yeah, just completely insane. And crazy stuff is happening all the time. It's a bit of a bloodbath in a way. And so I hope it continues because I love watching hockey like that. It's been a ton of fun watching that series. Probably outside of, I don't know, like of all these series, which one has been the most fun of all of them that you've seen? Because that one might be right up there for me.
Most intensely was probably Tampa, Florida, because I just really like the way Florida plays. But I watched a lot of Carolina and the Islanders, and I think it's a more Eastern thing because after a certain time period, you get tired because we're on the Eastern side of things. So I'm more focused and dialed into those games. So I would say that,
of course,
other than like maybe Winnipeg, Colorado has been the most exciting and fun of all of them.
Yeah, true.
Because Colorado just came out with so much steam. Like they were just crazy in all of those games. They just did not care. Even the game they lost, and they won 4 straight to eliminate Winnipeg, and they should have won 5 straight the way it went.
Yeah.
But like this series has been kind of wild and weird to me. And
it's been a ton of fun.
It's been a lot of fun. So we'll see what happens. If Pettersson, I feel like if Pettersson has a big night, Vancouver's able to win. And then maybe we get a Vancouver Edmonton series. I saw a comment earlier about Vancouver maybe matching up better against Edmonton. I'm not so sure.
I don't know about that. Yeah,
I think Edmonton would probably really take it to Vancouver. Like I think Vancouver overperformed this year, but I think they've got a really good group to build around, and what 100%. They've got is a really good start here for this year. And it's you take steps.
And Rick Tocchet has been really good with them. Like it seems like and every time I see Rick Tocchet doing interviews and everything, he's kind of like that Rod Brindamore style guy where it's like the way that he sees the game and the way he talks about it and the way that he talks about his own team, you kind of go, I can see why they go out there and play so hard for him. Like I can see the kinds of things that makes Vancouver do what they're doing based on how he presents himself and how he is answering questions and talking about the game and all of that stuff. Like, he just seems to have a really good sort of mind for how this is all supposed to go. And so I think that's a good thing to build off of as well. Like, yeah, they might have outperformed and relied on their goaltending a little bit, but like, I think they're a few smart moves away from being a really good team, right? They got the really good players up front. I think it's just a matter of sort of filling it out a little bit better, and
some of the bad
just,
contracts are coming off the books this year too, and you can improve your decor quite a bit. Like, let's say you
100%.
Upgrade from Tyler Myers and Sean Walker wants to play, because I think Sean Walker is from Ontario. Never mind. But if you can get like a Sean Walker, or you can find like somebody else to play on the right side that's not Tyler Myers, that's going to be faster, more mobile, and more of a modern defenseman. Like, I think Vancouver is going to, like, they could really have a seismic offseason in terms of just setting themselves up to be true contenders. Like, I think this year was a bit nuts, and they shouldn't have been where they were, but there's a really good base there, and now this team's gotten a taste of what it's like to feel like they're the cream of the crop, and I think that they can continue to just get better and be really good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So even if they lose, I wouldn't even be concerned. You just take it, and you go into next year, and with a lot of excitement and a lot of passion for what your team is going to be able to do, because it's not been good in Vancouver for the last little while.
Yeah. No, it has not.
And now you got, like, your team. The foundation was already there, but now you've seen success, and now they can build on it, and they've got some money to play with, so we'll see what they do.
So do you want to do a quick preview of the 1 second round series we know, or do you want to save that for another day, you think?
I think
it's Rangers Carolina.
Well, I think we save it for like the whole thing, just because we might as well just do all this series together, and let's not leave the viewers waiting for chat questions.
Yeah, let's switch over to chat questions.
You've heard enough of me for today.
Yeah, sure. So before we get to the questions, we're brought to you by Fanatics. You can use our affiliate link in the description or scan the QR code in the chat or in the window to provide a kickback to the show on anything you buy in the store. You can also support us through Puck Preps Hockey for all your NCAA, CHL, and currently under 18 prospect needs. There's also a podcast coming out that I just did with Joel Henderson and a few other members of the staff about recapping the USA Hockey Nationals at the 16U level, which was a ton of fun for me. Some good names to keep an eye on for next year. We're also brought to you by Fractal Hockey Consulting, which is my business for hand track targeted player analysis and recruitment packages for the NCAA, Europe, and beyond. And again, we're trying to partner with the Golden Bucket Tournament. So if you have an interest in playing overseas and you are currently a U Sports or NCAA athlete, or know someone who is, or coach a team of some kind, then you're more than welcome to get in touch with us and help out your players or help out yourself to keep your career going. You can also subscribe to Scouching.ca and get exclusive access to innovative data tools, unparalleled insights into draft prospects, and players making their way into the NHL with tons of other goodies, like a Discord server that we all have a lot of fun in, a fantasy league, which is entering its 3rd season, I believe, and plenty of other fun things. So let's get into the questions. There's not a ton of them, but that's okay. It's a Thursday afternoon, middle of playoffs. I get it. The Rangers won on special teams and goaltending despite getting outplayed at 5-on-5. Color me shocked. That's pretty much how it goes. And I mean, we'll get to the second round later, but Carolina is going to be quite the test, I think. That's my initial thought. When you're talking draft stuff, this is okay. How much do you buy the Beckett Seneca late riser hype? I mean, Beckett Seneca's weird. He's a guy who, for long stretches, you don't see a ton of, but then like he pops for a second and makes some really amazing stuff happen. So I think that if a team drafted him pretty high, I wouldn't be shocked. But like if he's like a top 10 player, then I would be a little bit surprised. I think that'd be a little bit rich for my tastes because of, the pace of his game isn't super great. And, he's a good shooter and a pretty decent playmaker and makes pretty good decisions, just a very smart, well-rounded offensive player. But I think you need like a little bit more or some sort of X factor. I do buy the argument that he had a growth spurt last year and hasn't really grown into his frame yet. And there's an argument for that as well. But all of those things always kind of spook me a little bit. And I feel like I would need people with more expertise in sort of youth development to really, educate me on that a little bit and ease my mind, especially when I'm saying no to quite a few very talented players. Not that he isn't. But I mean, I've seen some pretty outlandish stuff about Seneca in the last 48 hours, which I think is a little bit nutty. But he's not a bad player. And if your team drafts him relatively high, it's like there's a bit of risk, but I don't think he's going to turn out poorly. It's just that there's question marks, and that's okay. There's a lot of guys in this year's draft with question marks, so it's not a bad thing. We talked about that Vancouver thing. Thoughts on the trio of Swedes from the 2022 draft? Where were they ranked respectively in their draft year, and how do you view them currently? Yeah, so the guys specifically you're talking about, Liam Ogren, Noah Östlund, and Jonathan Lekaramaki. So at the time, I think I had Ogren first, and then Östlund, and then Lekaramaki, and I think...
Yeah, you did.
I think I would probably leave it that way. I did watch Liam Ogren when he played with the Wild this year for a couple of games, and I thought he looked really good. Like, there was a time this season he spent a lot of time injured and missed a lot of time in Sweden. And when he came back, he kind of looked a little bit slow and a little bit plodding and just not really sort of comfortable. But then in the playoffs, he kind of really turned it on and then came over to North America. And I thought in his NHL games, like, the reason I love him so much is just there's like such a well-rounded player there, right? Like, he's got skill, he can shoot, he can set up plays, but he's strong, responsible defensively, like just brings a lot of things to the table that I want to see. Noah Östlund, I think, is going to take a little bit longer to come along. Jonathan Lekaramaki had a fantastic season this year in Sweden. He's, I think, the guy who has taken the biggest strides for me since watching him a few years ago. Like, just with the ability to get into better scoring areas was the big critique I had of him. Was he was a volume shooter, a bit of a timid forechecker, a bit of a timid guy on the puck, and sort of perimeter focused. And to me, that's always a bit of a red flag, and that knocked him down my board. But he's come a long way. Like, just the agility has improved. He's much more of a northbound player, not thinking so much about just possession and staying to the boards and all that stuff. Like, he's simplifying things in a good way and just sort of getting more scoring area chances and generating more on his own. And he's come a long way, I think, in Örebro. Östlund had a really good year too. In Växjö, he had a really good year. I think another year in Sweden would certainly not do him any harm. And he's one of those guys that always was going to be a bit of a longer term thing, because he is that speed and skill and pace level guy who has tons and tons and tons of talent. But it's a matter of like physical development and ability to hold off pressure and get through layers and all those things with Östlund that were a bit of a question mark for me, but he's definitely improving as well. So I think I'd still put it in the same order, but I think Lekaramaki, as he is now, probably is more of an NHLer than Östlund. But in another couple of seasons, I think Östlund could be a very impactful sort of pacey, speedy guy up the middle of the ice to play for the Buffalo Sabres and fit in with what they've got going on there. How would you describe Tij Ginla as a player? Is he similar to his dad? I don't think he's really similar to his dad. He's more of a, like, not that Jerome Ginla wasn't a finesse player, but he was more of like a brute force power forward. Ginla brings, I think, a little bit more pace to his game. He brings a little bit more intensity in terms of he moves his feet, he attacks you, he goes right at you. His father did that too, but he does it in a bit of a different way. The skill level is really good. He's able to sort of, juke around and shake off players in transition and make little gaps for himself. And there's a lot to like about Tij Ginla. Definitely a super hardworking guy. Like, you can tell that his dad is a guy like Jerome Ginla, where it's like he's working his tail off every shift. Like, you can tell he's a guy that coaches are going to give every chance for success, because honestly, he deserves it. Like, he's one of those guys that even if something doesn't really go right, when he goes over the boards, you know what you're getting from him. You know you're going to get a really responsible, intense player who forechecks hard and, can shoot the puck for sure, but also has a bit of playmaking to him. And, if he can sort of learn in a way, it kind of reminds me a little bit of like a Fabian Lysell vibe, where it's like if he learns how to slow things down when he needs to a little bit, just see the ice, a little bit better than he already does, which is pretty good, and just sort of play with a little bit more variety in his game and not just so much of a go, challenging guys one-on-one type player. I think he could be really, really interesting. I don't know if he's going to be like a top line NHL player, but like a good, energetic middle six guy in the mold of like a, Barclay Goodrow or Ross, well, maybe not a Ross Colton, but like a Barclay Goodrow type guy where there's a bit of skill there, but he's a physical, resilient sort of ox on skates that really sort of moves at you hard and can play pretty hard. So there's something there in that range. So like a middle six energy guy that plays pretty well. Thoughts on the Drake and Kendrick Lamar diss tracks? I could not care less, to tell you the truth. Could not care less.
I didn't even know that happened.
Apparently it's been going back, and Sam won't shut up about it. Sam McGilligan loves that stuff. So you can ask Sam next time he's on the show. You can ask him, and he'll have a better answer than I do. But I don't know. My hip hop and rap world is generally more located on the roots level. De La Soul, Tribe Called Quest. Those kinds of things. I don't really keep up with the whole. I don't know. It's just not really my thing these days.
Other Zoomer folk like me, but I don't keep up.
Exactly. I mean, I know what Skibbity Toilet is. I'm a big Skibbity Toilet guy. I love that.
Of course you are.
But yeah, of course. I think it's hilarious.
Anything to do with bathroom talk, Will's all over.
Sure. Why not?
But I mean, that's the nicest way to put it.
really, really bizarre nonsense humor. Sign me up. I'm totally
Will is an
for
absurdist.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I was raised on Tim and Eric. Like Tim and Eric, awesome show, great job. One of my favorites when I was younger.
I know how big a fan you are of Kenny versus Spenny too.
Oh yeah, dude, that was my middle school experience. My coming of age was Kenny versus Spenny. Hilarious. And it's all on YouTube if you want to check them out.
Yeah.
But
my
who
dad
can
worked
fart
on that
the
show.
loudest?
He's got a credit on what is it?
Nice.
Seasons 2 through 5 as the legal counsel. He was almost on an episode.
Now there's a job.
Almost
legal counsel for Kenny versus Spenny.
Yeah, it was quite the job.
I bet. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, if you have never seen Kenny versus Spenny, you got to check out the episode Who Can Fart the Loudest.
That's one of my favorites.
One of my favorite episodes.
I would say my favorite is Who Can Be Obese the Longest, because the character Melvin is so funny that Kenny puts on. He goes to Dutch Dreams too, and I loved Dutch Dreams as a kid. Like I loved that ice cream place, and so seeing him go to Dutch Dreams and hit on a guy and tell him how attractive he is in like this fat suit is so funny.
Yeah, and there's a lot of classics in that one. What do we got? Hey, I know this is a talk about Stanley Cup playoffs, but who's a player you really like from the Slovakian under-18 team? Matthias Tomek looks amazing for 2026. So if you didn't know, the Slovak team, I should say, upset the Czechs. The Czechs are a team that sometimes just doesn't really come together as a unit, and worse teams can win. The Slovaks were not, I don't think there was a particularly strong group of Slovak players this year, but what you kind of alluded to, the young guys that they brought, they're the youngest team in the tournament, very close to being not the youngest team, but considering they're a semifinalist team and their average age is like under 17 is really amazing. And so I look at them, and I mean, Thomas Pobazal is the guy that I always have really paid a lot of attention to on that Slovak team. I thought he had a pretty good tournament. There was one other, Miroslav Shatan Jr. Was hilarious. I loved watching him in this tournament, and I think that, I think he earned himself a draft pick, perhaps, but he's a long-term guy. Like, you leave him in Slovakia for a few years, or maybe he comes to the CHL for a while, but I've never seen a guy that tall, that age, skate that fast ever. And so that's always a ton of fun. But yeah, Pobazal was the guy that I probably would have pointed to. I thought you're right. I think Tomek, for a guy who is eligible in 2026, played pretty well as well. There was Tobias Pitka, I thought also played pretty well in this tournament. But yeah, my guy from Slovakia always has been Thomas Pobazal, almost eligible for this year's draft as well. I don't know where he would be ranked on my board if he were eligible this year, but probably, I don't know. I've watched him for 2 years now, and I feel like he would slot in somewhere in the late first into the second round this year based on what I've seen, but that's neither here nor there. He's been quite good. And yeah, we'll see what happens in the semifinals for them. I haven't looked yet on who they're going to be playing. I can check that now on my handy dandy under 18 sheet. But they are going to be playing Canada, so that's going to be a tough one because Canada has been outstanding. Anaheim Ducks future outlook. You know what? I can't really fault the Ducks. They are looking pretty good in general. The only thing about the Ducks that I might criticize is that I think they're one of these teams that is trying to build for the future, thinking that the NHL playoffs are like you need to be big and tough in the playoffs to win, which to a certain extent is true, but that seems to be like the priority, right? Like that seems to be like what they are focused on, right? Okay, so it's USA, Slovakia, Canada, Sweden. There you go.
Still a tough matchup, right?
Still a tough matchup. The US is probably they reseed them, right? Because Slovakia was seeded lower. Slovakia against the US is going to also be very tough. But where was I? Anaheim Ducks.
Yes.
Right. So, yeah, I mean, like, I can't imagine they're actually going to trade Trevor Zegras. If they do, I think that's also very indicative of the direction they think they want to go. You look at who they've drafted, right? Nathan Gaucher, first-round draft pick. I would say that's questionable.
Mm-hmm.
Tristan Luneau, I guess, is okay. I think he's unproven in the NHL, and I don't know. Maybe he's gotten a lot better from what I remember. Noah Warren is a second-round draft pick, like is one of the first guys you draft, I think is also a strange decision. But, getting Cutter Gauthier is a big plus. I think they have it's another year where they have a ton of picks. So the Ducks, I think they also have a lot of cap flexibility. Yeah, they've got 7 picks in the first 3 rounds this year. So it'll be like, this is going to be super pivotal, right? Like, think about Toronto back a few years ago when they drafted guys like Matthews and Marner and all those guys. Like, the other guys you draft make your life down the road so much easier.
Yes, they do.
and if you focus on the wrong things and get wrapped up in, well, what happens when we are good and then go to the playoffs, then these guys will be very useful. And it's like, but that like that. I don't think that's how that works, right? And so when I look at
instead of Alex DeBrincat, Yegor Korshkov.
Yegor Korshkov, a 20-year-old, whatever. He scored a spinorama at the World Juniors, therefore almost a first-round pick. But yeah, I mean, I think I look at the Ducks and I go, look, they have all of the tools and equipment to do very, very well. They have a really good defense group as well. I think Pavel Mintyukov played great this year.
Yep.
I thought Olin Zellweger played really well when he played in the NHL this year. Mason McTavish took a step forward. I think he's becoming a pretty darn good player. Cutter Gauthier is coming to town. He's pretty good. Leo Carlson was great this year.
Oh, he was
like
insane. I loved watching Leo this year.
It's all there. The pieces are all there. They're so close. But if the focus turns into, okay, we have our guys now for the future. Now let's go get the guys that are going to piss everyone else off. That's where you kind of lose me. Like, I would rather see the Ducks, especially because I remember this about the Ducks when I was a kid. The Ducks just feel right when they just are an offensive juggernaut, when they have a lot of skill and fun and intensity, which I think they have. That there's a lot of that already, but it's how you apply that terminology that can make or break you. And so we'll see what they do in the draft. We'll see. Based on their trends, I think they might leave a lot of talent on the board. And I think that still it will be okay, though, because of how much volume they have, right? Like, yeah, sure. You look at the Arizona Coyotes or whatever, or Utah. Sure, they ended up with Connor Geekie, right? But what did they give up? They gave up a lot, and they left a lot on the table to jump all the way up in the draft and draft their guy. And what did San Jose do? They drafted Philip Biested, who has looked really, really good. He's come a long way since his draft year, and looks like a player who, and I said this at the time, right? Like, at the end of the day, Connor Geekie might be a second, third line center in the NHL. Philip Biested might be a decent second or a good third line center in the NHL. And, so I'm sure San Jose is more than happy to add those extra picks and do all that stuff. And so that's where you kind of got to go, okay, but like, there's a lot of darts to throw at the board. So let's focus on really trying to get some special players that will help around the core we already have, right? Like, and I think they're getting there. But I think this is a pivotal draft for them, especially because next year they traded their second round pick. And they have, I think, 6 other picks for next year. Like, that's not, I think the expectation is that they start taking steps, and we'll see how it goes.
Yeah. They also have all the size now too, to the point where you could draft more skilled guys. Like,
I don't think they will, though.
I don't think they will either, but even a conservative sort of mindset on this is like, skill's great, man. And I know, like, there's all this idea, you can never have too many big centers or whatever, but, like, can you really ever have too much skill?
No, you can't. Like, again, look at how Colorado is playing. They've got some size.
To be fair.
They have some size for sure.
They're also speedy, and that's part of it.
Like, it, to me, when you're a speedy team, it often doesn't really matter how big you are.
Yep.
It's a factor, but it's much less important to me, So if I'm Anaheim, like, that's my focus. And I would love to go back after this draft is done and say, well, if I were the general manager of the Ducks over the last 4 years, who would have gone off my board at those picks, even if it was just the best player available on my board, who would it have been? And comparing it to where the Ducks are now, because I've done that before for some teams, and it's like, I mean, yeah, you might make the argument that development matters, and, like, there's all this other stuff of, like, well, it's about fit and all of this stuff, but there sure are a lot of players that went way too late that probably would have been at least in the first handful of players that I would have considered at a lot of these picks. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, I think the Ducks are, like, you want optimism. I have no reason to see why I wouldn't be at least pretty optimistic about the Ducks.
Yeah.
I was expecting Hellenius to be a dominant player at the U18s. Did he have a bad tourney, or what's up? No, like, I've been saying this all season long. He was constant. He was, there's a report out now. Like, he is constant. He was constant Hellenius at this tournament. He's a guy who lacks a lot of pace in his game. He is not the most skilled guy in the world, but a very smart player. I think he had, like, I want to double check this, but at least in the round robin, I think he only had 1 even strength point throughout the early parts of the tournament, and him and Kiwi Harju were on the power play and very, very good together on the power play, but that also is not news. So Hellenius is a guy who, again, for me, it's like, I think top 10 is crazy for him. Like, he's a 5'11" center that plays physical, which is cool. Very smart kid, but you're betting on development in other areas that everyone else is also going to get better at, right? Like the skating and the skill level and the shot quality and all of that stuff. I think it lags behind a lot of guys at this level. And he became, at least at 5-on-5 to me in this tournament, like, he was the better player, one of the best players on Finland, if not the best at 5-on-5. But you look at him and then you look at some of the guys that were on the States or the Canadian team who are eligible for this year, and you can kind of just go, yeah, but I think I like those guys better, right? Like, I'm trying to think off the top of my head, but I'll kill time while I open up my thing. But, like,
is that what you're thinking?
Well, Catton's not in the tournament. He's not there. Okay. But for me, like, I mean, maybe Canada's best players aren't eligible this year, so maybe not them. But I don't know. For Hellenius, like, again, I look at this tournament and I go, what do I think about these players going into the tournament, and what are my expectations of them, and do they change my outlook after I see them at this tournament, because it is a nice little pressure cooker of, like, their own cohort. And I kind of came in going, yeah, I have him in my late first round. I think he could be a decent sort of third line NHL center and smart as heck. That's very valuable. But what about the guys that you would rather have, right? And I think there's just a lot of them, right? Like, you look at a Trevor Connolly on the States, right? Like, he's been great in this tournament. Teddy Stiga has been outstanding in this tournament. Cole Yzerman even has had some really good moments. So I look at those guys and I'm going, yeah, I think I would rather bet on those guys for NHL output. But Hellenius isn't a bad player. It's just a matter of, like, I think my expectations of him have always been much more limited. And now coming out of this tournament, I'm looking at him playing, and I am paying a lot of attention to him because he is a guy where I want to pay a lot of attention to a player because if I disagree with consensus on him, I want to make sure that I believe that for sure. And I watched him at this tournament and I went, yeah, this is the same guy I've seen all year. Like, he's a good player, super, super smart, but I don't know. This should be a tournament where he is dominant if he's going to be a top 10 player. And I didn't really see that personally. And that's the same thing for the World Junior, right? Like, I was hoping, honestly, if anything, he was a little bit disappointing for what I expected because of his lack of even strength production, even against the bad teams in the tournament. But, you know, that's neither here nor there. Regardless, it kind of was what I expected, unfortunately. Thoughts on Canada, Sweden, USA, Slovakia semifinals? I think Canada might run into some trouble expecting an easier game. I don't think so. I think Canada is too good to lose despite themselves. Like, they might go to the penalty box 8 times in a game. They're going to score 8 goals. Like, it would be a historic miracle if this Canadian team lost to Slovakia. Like, I know they just played Latvia and only won 4-0, but I don't really care. Like, the firepower that has happened from Canada this year, and Slovakia being a team that outside of this game against Czech Republic has been not great. They allowed 19 goals in 4 games, and Canada allowed 7. Granted, 3 of those were against Kazakhstan, but whatever. They don't need to talk
Sweden,
about
that.
What?
Isn't the game against Sweden?
Oh, yeah. It's Oh, yeah, USA, Slovakia, right. Now I'm confused. But it doesn't matter. Same thing goes. Canada, Sweden. I misinterpreted. Yeah, it's Canada, Sweden. We got it now. We're there. But I agree. But I will say about Sweden is they just haven't played up to anything, really. Today's game against Finland was a bit of a snoozer. Canada does not play snoozer hockey. They do not, for better or worse, they do not do that. So with Canada, yeah, I think that game might be a little closer, but I have not looked at Sweden this year in the tournament and gone, I'm scared as a Canadian of this group. And maybe they underestimate them, maybe. And maybe Love Harenstam stands on his head and saves the game for Sweden. But I also look at, the thing about Canada against a team like Sweden is they're going to need to stay disciplined. Because Sweden does have a few players on their team who are antagonists. They are jerks. They are mean. And if you are not careful, you might end up with a penalty box parade, which has undone Canada previously. I just think that the raw talent that Canada has is going to step up. And like, Gavin McKenna has been unbelievable in this tournament. Porter Martone has been great in this tournament. Malcolm Spence has been great in this tournament. And those guys, I don't know. I think Sweden, you look at what Sweden brought to the tournament. I'd say Lucas Pettersson has been good. Alphonse Frey has been good. I think Carl Sterner has been okay. But there's been nobody that has really sort of consistently grabbed this tournament and gone, I'm making a statement here. Like, maybe Lucas Pettersson. But other than that, I haven't really seen it with them. And I don't know. With Canada, I definitely have seen that. How much weight would you give to injuries like Demidov's knee, Catton's hip, and Lindstrom's wrist? Guys get hurt in hockey all the time. Like, are Leaf fans concerned that Austin Matthews is sick or concerned that his wrist was messed up last year? Like, no. The advances in sports medicine over the last 20 years since I was a kid have been enormous, by the way. Like, when I was little, they were doing ACL replacements with cables, like metal steel cables. Like,
is this
now
before I was born, Will?
Yeah, probably. And like, now they use your tendon from your elbow and just stick it in your knee because it works a lot better, obviously. Like,
yeah,
I'm not super concerned. To me, it's like you even if they come back a little slow next year for whatever reason, then yeah, you might be a little bit concerned, but I think you just give them, we're talking years of development here, right? Like, is Demidov's knee injury so awful that in 3 years he's still going to be struggling? He wasn't struggling in the first place, but like, when has that ever happened, right? Like, when in the last 10 years, when has that happened? Like, Peyton Krebs, I think, was injured with a broken leg going into the playoffs or into the draft, but he's turned out pretty good. And I think there's more room for him to develop. And it's not like he has been a disappointment of a player. So to me, I'm not really worried about it. Injuries are injuries, right? Like, a team will know what they're doing generally with sports injuries. Yeah, players might want to come back before they're fully healed, but in general, I think injuries and such with the context of the draft, not that big of a deal, really. Cranky online scout with Seneca not in the top 10 or top 5, but possibly top 3. I did see that online today. Look, the guy in question knows how to get attention. He knows how to get clicks. He knows what he's doing, and it worked. So we'll leave it at that.
Is it who I think it is?
Probably. David Phillips is here. Hello.
R in his name or in his branding?
Oh yeah. Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Yes. I haven't caught a stream in a while, but I would like to know your thoughts on no, I'm not doing it. No, David, you've lost your privileges. Nope, not doing it. I don't believe you. Have you watched AJ Spellacy and Eric's Matejko thoughts? So I've seen Spellacy a little bit. Again, it's like he's not a bad player, but it's like who's he going to bump off the list? I don't really know. I should take another look at him. It's been a long time since I've seen him, so that's a good reminder.
A great name.
He does have a really good name. It's true. Eric's Matejko, I have a really hard time with him. Like he is a gigantic player playing in Quebec. Well, technically New Brunswick, but whatever.
The Quebec Maritime League.
The Quebec Maritime. Yeah, he's playing in the QM. And I mean, I don't know. I haven't really been blown away with his game. I was not really blown away with him at the World Junior. Like just seems like a discount Adam Jecko, like a decently skilled big dude who can move okay, but I don't know. Again, it's like he has been on my board in the past, and I should take another look at him. I have a couple of games of him logged that I haven't done yet, or archived that I haven't done yet. So I will do those before the end of the year. But I've never been taken enough with Matejko's game to think that outside of let's draft him because he's gigantic and has decent skill, and we can leave him developing for 5 years and see what he's like. Sure. But if someone's thinking like, oh, let's draft him 60th overall, I'm going, yeah, I'll take the guy that I have ranked 25 that's still available. Pros and cons of stick handling in tight and out wide. What different complementary skills are needed for each type to be effective? Well, I mean,
it's just a situation based.
Yeah, it's
right?
a situational thing. Like being able to stick handle under heavy pressure, like in the NHL, that's all it is really a lot of the time, right? Like you're not seeing what you're seeing with like Gavin McKenna, right? Where Gavin McKenna can just hold onto the puck and put it through his legs and dance around the perimeter and change his angles and flip his edges around and get different looks at the offensive zone. That just doesn't happen very often in the NHL. So to me, it's a lot about like stick handling at full pace and full flight is really important because they could be evasive. They can get through players really easily on the rush. They can whatever. But when it comes to the offensive zone and actually putting the puck in the net, when you've got guys who can go in front of the net and just make those quick skill moves and move pucks around and open up goalies, that's a huge plus to have. And that's the thing, like I think this might stem from Wyatt Johnston, but he's one of those guys who kind of can do that. And he also does have the skill in open ice to make stuff happen as well. So I think in terms of complementary skills, I mean, in tight, it's a bit more about how strong you can be and your body positioning. Like body positioning in hockey is huge, you know, and it's not just about being big, right? Like it's about putting yourself between a forechecker and the puck. It's about putting yourself, you know, in good position to make a play with a good view of the ice, because if you're facing the boards, it's really difficult to then turn around and get a better look at the ice, right? Otherwise, you're just blindly shooting it up the boards or whatever. So it's a lot. I think a lot of it is not necessarily about pure skill level, but about like strength and just resilience when you have guys hounding you in front of the net or something. You can kind of get away with maybe not being the fastest guy in that area if you're good at that. And I think a lot of guys in the NHL have made a good living just being that scoring area skill player. Like James Van Riemsdyk is a great example of that type of player. But would he be a guy that I would give the keys to a line and transitioning pucks up the ice? Probably not, right? Like
Definitely
Brad
not.
Lambert's kind of the opposite, right? Like he's a guy where in the transition game, he's the guy I want quarterbacking the puck because of the speed and skill that he has. But would I put him in the front of the net on the power play to be that finisher with skill? No, I wouldn't do that. I'd have him on the half wall making plays, which is where Winnipeg had him, which is great. But it's just, that's kind of where I see it as complementary. Thoughts on John Whipple? I want him to be a thing really bad, but I don't see enough out of him. He's on my watch list. He's been there for the whole year. Skilled kid, decent skater. I feel like he could be a much more offensively dynamic player, but he isn't. So I don't know. It depends on his development. I think if you develop him well, he could turn out really well.
David's trying to get back in your good books.
Yeah, he is. Yeah, he is. Sam's too. Sam loves John Whipple. Last stream, you told me there were better choices for the Wings other than Seneca. Who did you have in mind? Well, I mean,
I did a draft lottery simulator just for this.
Yeah.
And
they won?
No, they didn't. They can't win. But they have 15th. Arizona won. So Utah won, and then Philly came second.
Nice.
Somehow.
The way it should be.
Yeah, the way it should be. So they're gonna draft
I mean,
15 probably
for Detroit. I mean, so if you didn't know, on Twitter yesterday, I put out that I've made a draft simulator that sort of runs just a bunch of code based on rankings that I track and my own list, and basically just helping me sort of simulate what might happen at the draft and who might be available where. And I did one for the Wings. And it really seems like the best players available generally when I simulate it are defensemen. And when I put out that I was drafting 2 defensemen for the Red Wings early in the draft, I got a lot of Red Wings fans going, yeah, this is fine and all, but we're not drafting more defensemen. And my retort to that would be like, I don't think you're ever done drafting talented players. Like, there's no guarantee that any of the defensemen that have been drafted by Detroit already are going to be rock solid NHL players, right? Like, I know you just drafted oh my God, Axel Sandin Pellikka, who is really good. I like him a lot, but there are gaps in his game that could limit NHL upside. For me, I look at a guy like Alphonse Frey and I go, I would much rather have 2 bullets in the chamber for a player like that in Frey and Sandin Pellikka than I would going, yeah, let's bet on Beckett Seneca and say maybe he'll grow into his body and get a lot better in the next few years. I think it's possible. I could easily see the Wings going with a guy like Beckett Seneca. I could see it. But whenever I run my own work, it's like guys like Adam Jiricek are there. Guys like maybe even a Zeev Bouillon, a guy like Alphonse Frey is there. And I mean, Frey, I imagine will be there unless he has some amazing under 18 games for the rest of the tournament. But I don't know. There's going to be a lot of choices for Detroit though, because the top 20 this year to me from about 4 to 20 is extremely close. And I guarantee you that teams will draft outside of that 20 in the top 20. So I get the feeling that someone that I really like will be there for the Red Wings, and we'll see what they do. And if it's Seneca, then it's Seneca for sure. But I just think that, again, like if you go into the draft and you think about positions and needs and we have already drafted this and we have this and we have this, I kind of just go, yeah, but none of that is a guarantee. All prospects are bad until they're not, right? Like that's the rule. They're all terrible hockey players in the context of the NHL, and then they're not. So give yourself as good a shot as you can and worry about having too much of a good thing in 3 years, right? Like, oh no, we have too many dynamic offensive defensemen. What are we going to do? I'd rather have that problem than, oh, well, we passed on this guy to draft this guy, and he's like a good third line guy, but boy, he looks really good in a Winnipeg jersey, right? Like those kinds of things.
You can always trade those guys too, right? Like if you end up with a surplus of something, who cares? Just trade and find a team that matches your needs and you match theirs and get a deal done. Yeah.
Have you seen Danielson lately? No, I have not. Every time I've seen him this season, though, he still is Nate Danielson. He is very okay. Is Will Scan something? Maybe. I think, hello, Mikhail, by the way, all the way from Sweden. Is Will Scan something? I mean, I've liked him, but only insofar as like a bare minimum defenseman in a good way, right? Like he's a big, solid skater who I think moves the puck. If he keeps it really simple, moves the puck really well, rarely makes a bad play. And, you know, there are moments where I think there's some offense there, but I don't know. If Will Scan's a guy that someone drafts like 30th overall, I'm going, oh, okay, like maybe you get a player there, but I think there's still a ways to go. I like him more than EJ Emery right now. I think EJ Emery is a bit more of a rough around the edges type guy, and Scan I think is a little more refined and, you know, just a little bit more projectable. But they both could probably end up playing similar roles in the NHL. Am I running up to draft him? No, but I like him okay. Matthias Deli putting up 3 assists against Kazakhstan today. Is he better than Michael Brensek Newgard? Yes. Yeah, that's automatic. Yeah, Matthias Deli, about 6'12", going to the net, bashing away at pucks. Yes. I will say before we go, I mean, big props to the Kazakh team. I didn't give them a shot in heck to do anything, and granted, they were relegated, but I mean, they scored 3 against Canada. That's amazing. They won their first game ever at this tournament, and that's amazing. And they brought one of the youngest teams in the tournament. They were the second youngest team they were third youngest, but them, Latvia, and Slovakia were both on an island together as very, very young teams. They had 3 players eligible for the 2026 draft on their team.
Did they play the correct national anthem when they won?
I don't know. I don't remember. Probably not.
I hope
but
not.
Yeah, and one of their, I think, if I'm not mistaken, I don't actually know, that's not true. I was going to say one of their best players was one of the 2026 eligibles, but I don't think that's true because I think there were a pair of brothers on the team. There was, I mean, the guy that led this the way, the guy who scored the hat trick against Canada, Abzal Alibek, I thought played really well for a guy that I had never ever heard of or never seen, and I looked him up, and he played like 8 minutes a night for his Russian junior league team. That was awful. So I kind of went and looked at him and I went, okay, maybe this guy's actually kind of decent. I don't know if he's like worth drafting or anything, but I certainly would file it away and go, you know what? Maybe he's with that team in Astana for a couple of years and does pretty well, and who knows where he goes from there. But he played really, really well. It was Asan Ali Sarkinov who had the hat trick. Well, regardless, Abzal Alibek was the guy that I enjoyed the most. They have names that are too similar to one another, and it all just blends together. But in any case, good job to them. It was a huge game with them and Norway today. It went to a shootout. Unfortunately, they came away with the loss, but Norway was also a pretty interesting team, especially when you think about forecasting into the future. But in any case, that's going to be it for today. We've had a really fun time talking about the NHL playoffs. We'll have a lot more to talk about Monday afternoon, I think, judging by how these series have been going. But in any case, before we go, I'll just do our final little ad read here, and then we'll say bye. We're brought to you by Fanatics. You can use our affiliate link in the description, or you can scan the QR code below my head in the window to provide a kickback to the show on anything you buy in the store. You can also support us through Puck Preps, where you get all your NCAA and CHL prospect needs, as well as good under 18 coverage. Maybe not great, but good coming from me. You've also got Fractal Hockey Consulting, which is my business for hand track targeted player analysis and recruitment packages for the NCAA, Europe, and beyond. We got solutions for any organization's needs on the business and the hockey side of things. And of course, Scouching.ca, where you can get exclusive access to data tools, tons of insight into the draft and prospects making their way into the NHL, as well as plenty of other fun stuff you can check out at Scouching.ca and subscribe and check it out. So thank you very much. AJ, final thoughts, final words. What do you got?
Prayers.
Thoughts and prayers?
Go Leafs, go. Pray.
Okay, got it. Well,
Leafs
we'll see how it goes.
Leafs in 7. Come on. I gotta pull out.
Gotta have hope.
Yeah. I was just faking. Just faking. I'm confident. This is over. We're gonna win. It's done. Just like the show.
So,
good night, everybody.
Yeah, we'll see you around. See you Monday.
Yeah, see ya.